Stand please and say the pledge. I would appreciate it. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We're beginning a meeting here. The Board of Commissioners meeting is September 9th, 10 o'clock.
It's September 5th.
Oh, 5th. Well, am I getting it right?
Mike, did you say the 10th? No.
You need your mic, Commissioner, or Madam Chair.
Oh, good. Nobody heard me.
No, you said the 5th.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Okay, I'd like to introduce everybody. We've got Administrator Schroeder on my far left, Commissioner Huxley, myself, Commissioner Gold, Commissioner Boyce, Council Huddle, and John Jesuit, who's our administrative assistant. So we'll begin. Let the fun begin. Does anybody have any agenda amendments? Commissioner Boyce?
Madam Chair, thank you. If I may, a moment of silence, more police officers and soldiers that we have lost. I don't want to give you the numbers today, next meeting. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Gold.
You're welcome. Any other amendments to the agenda? Commissioner Huxley?
I'd like to pull under the consent calendar D 1, 2, 4, and 6.
1, 2, 4, and 6. What we'll do is we'll just put them after D, in that order.
After which?
After D.
Madam Chair,
Or
how about after presentations?
After presentations?
Yes.
Sure. Any other amendments to the agenda? Commissioner Boyd, or Huxley?
Just a correction. I don't know what the difficulty is. I truly don't. But on the executive session, which is L, we still can't manage to reference the proper authority. I would suggest, just as a cheat sheet, there's about a 3-page in the statutes that lists everyone so that it's clear and it's easy to get the right statutes, but we can't be continuing to reference the wrong authority.
So what is it? What should it be?
This one should be 192.660 subsection 2 subsection D.
Okay. And then I have one other thing I'd like to add. I would like to add it to, well, I've got a letter of condolences to Merv George. I would like the commissioners to sign that, so how about under regular agenda, item 16?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
will you be reading that letter for the public?
Yes, I will.
Thank you very much.
We probably should number that number 18, by the way, since we have 17 items. If you wouldn't mind just having it number 18, it would be following item number 15, though.
Okay, any other amendments to the agenda?
We have County Emergency Manager Jeremy Dumeyer here, along with some representatives of the fire team, the red team, and if we're going to spend some time in the consent agenda, by the way, I was going to pull number 6, D6, but
It is 6.
yes, thank you. I'd like to hear their presentation and let them get back to the very serious business they have at hand.
Well, what we're going to do is consent agenda will be very quick, stuff that's left, and we've got public comments, not too many, so I think we can go in the right order, and then the presentations.
I'm just not convinced that the consent agenda will go fast, but I'll leave that up to you, Madam Chair.
We only have 2 items there now. I think it'll go really quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other amendments to the agenda? Okay, could I get a motion?
Sorry, Madam Chair. At your places, I have delivered a revised ordinance on item 13, the travel policy. I'll discuss it then.
Okay, and that's already under 13 anyway, so.
Right, and so there's just some revisions, corrections for you.
Okay, great. So could I get a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Second the motion.
Call for the question?
Aye.
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 Okay, so let's move to public comments. Looks like we've got a few here. So John Yost, you're number 1. Yeah, go up to the microphone if you would, please.
Do you want to talk about what public comments?
None of these. Okay, let me just tell you something about public comments. If
5 copies here for commissioners to verify what I'm talking about.
If some of you have comments on things that are on the agenda, I am going to put that with the agenda. What we'll do is have staff report first and then the public comment after that. But I looked at all of the
This goes into the
public
record.
comments and
Or
none
your
of them
copy
fit
goes into the
in
record.
I have a copy,
agenda
yeah.
items. So go on. John, you're up. Here you go.
Well, good morning. I'm John Yost. I've been a resident of Oregon now for all my life. I've lived in Brookings for 50 years and up to South Bank where I'm at now for 40 years in the same house. This summer we have a high influx of squatters. That's all I can call them. They camp out on white spots on the county road. They got RVs, motorhomes, campers, and this morning, tents. And I've, all this month, all summer actually, I've made very many calls to the Curry County Sheriff's Office, and I get numerous excuses. We don't have a deputy available, they're on current assignments, such and such, you know, just different arguments, and nothing's ever done. So I called the road commissioner, Mr. Christensen, yeah. And he said, he told me, this is on Wednesday the 22nd, I believe, of August, he said they was working on an ordinance to eliminate this camping on the county roads. So I volunteered to help him by getting signatures to help out this ordinance. And I got 48 of them in just a period of 2 partial days. And they're all very adamant about eliminating this problem. And there's a number of them are very scary because they want to take physical action. And I'm not their leader. I am not a leader of anybody. But I managed to calm them down until hope arises, because I called the editor of the paper and they sent a reporter up. They interviewed me. They took pictures of these items. They're included. And they wrote an article in the paper. It's very helpful. And then I was advised to come before you people and see what could be done. Now, these signatures are all from South Bank residents, and they're very adamant to get this done because there's the health factor. They don't have their sewer hoses hooked up during the day because it's too easy to see. But I've seen them. I've drove up behind them and they run their sewer over the banks. So I called the DEQ. This was weeks ago. Their reply was, well, we'll try to send somebody down the end of the month and look it over.
John, we're going to have to wind it up because we're...
Pardon me?
We're going to have to wind it up because we're on a 3-minute thing for public
Oh, I'm
comment.
on a timer?
Yeah, you are. Can you wind it up really quick?
Well, anyway,
I can see you've got a definite complaint.
That's very short timed because these signatures, oh, there's a danger factor. This should be, even if I run over this danger factor, we have a company up there, Freeman Rock. They have a lot of trucks running up and down the road. They use these wide spots to pull off the road to let traffic go by. They can't do that if there's a tent there. Am I out of time?
Yeah, you are, but I'll tell you
Yeah,
what,
you
we're
can
going
go.
to turn this over to staff so that we can possibly do something about this for you, because we need to get it on the agenda, the regular agenda, to actually do something. And I think it's important. I've kind of reviewed some of your stuff here, and it is an important issue. So we're not going to let it die, okay?
Yeah, these truck drivers are irate because they can't use these
Oh,
turnouts. Then
I
they start
totally
to turn,
understand.
And there's a damn camper.
Okay, thanks so much. Commissioner
I have a
Huxley?
question, and I've talked to John, myself, but I have a question with, I guess, county council, not necessarily for an answer, but at least to put the question out there. Is this another one with under the subject of code enforcement? We have an update today from Hamilton Lane, which was code enforcement. We've had other items which are code enforcement. We have some, we're still trying, I assume, to hire a part-time or full-time code enforcement officer. We have, in one of those code enforcement subjects is environmental, which this certainly sounds like environmental. Could some of these authorities that we now have to cite people for some of those other code enforcement issues possibly flow into the scenario that was just just described here? Just a question for not necessarily an answer this minute, but
I think the general answer is yes, this could come under code enforcement. Staff has briefly looked at this. I've worked with County Administrator Schroeder on this, and the Sheriff's Office, and Richard Christensen, the Roadmaster. There's actually multiple options to go down on some of these, and one of them includes homeless camping on public property. So I think it's a matter of, and then again, the staffing, and I'd let Administrator Schroeder talk to the progress on the code enforcement officer, but this is unfortunately just another item on the list, or perhaps, if you want to say, another justification for the hiring of a code enforcement officer, that we just have these circumstances happening, and as the Sheriff's Department said, limited resources to handle it. So we budgeted, and we're trying to get the resources. So, and then it's just a matter of, once we have the resources, the options are, can we fine them? Perhaps we could issue them a citation. What will that do? Very difficult, on that route. So then, the general rules here are, if we are going to seize a person or their property, you can't have a search or seizure without probable cause or a warrant. And so we need to go through a lot of these processes, and there's specific state statutes on regulating camping of homeless persons on public property. So again, there's multiple options. There's obstructions in right-of-way. Oddly, unfortunately as well, what we're discovering is some of the property, as he talks about the wide spots, some of those are not public right-of-way, and those aren't the county property. So each circumstance has a lot of different variables to it, but we're taking a multi-departmental approach to this, and we're trying to come up with a solution, and I'd leave any further explanation to Mr. Schroeder on that.
thank you.
Okay, so we're not just letting it go. That's what we're saying. So we appreciate you coming, John. Thank you. Next?
Excuse me, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Do we want to hear from Administrator Schroeder?
I was going to give an administrative report on code enforcement during my administrative report. That's I think on a weekly basis, or whatever we have meetings, I will update the board at that time.
Okay, great. Thank you. Jack Gresham? bet. Good luck. It's cool to meet you.
And you just put them on the desktop?
Yeah, I just put them on the desktop, so if I can just see the desktop, I'm good.
Right here?
Yeah. First ones. Okay, thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. Appreciate you giving me the time to talk to you for a couple of minutes. My neighbors and I have come today to give you an update on what's been going on in Hamilton Lane. And if I can get this. Okay, what am I doing wrong?
Sometimes you have to double click it.
Okay, that's what I thought I was doing. There we go. Okay.
I hope this is the before picture.
This is the before picture, yes.
Okay.
I'm here just to give you an update on the burned down abandoned house on Hamilton Lane in Harbor. I'm happy to report that this house is no longer there. And
Should we applaud now? That's awesome.
yeah, that is what it looks like today. Just last week they finished tearing down the house. So we are only here to thank all of you for your efforts and your help, the Sheriff's Department for their help over this in resolving this problem, and especially to thank John Huddle, whose efforts were instrumental in helping bring this problem to a close. The property has been put up for sale. We understand that the property will be closing within the next couple of weeks and will have a new owner. So we appreciate all of your efforts. Thank you for your time, and I know that it would not have happened without your help, and especially your help, John.
You're welcome.
And thank you for coming back. All we usually hear is bad things, so this is good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we wanted to give you the update.
If I could just briefly, Madam Chair. So this started last October, so I just want to let you know for the most recent speaker that there's a ton of process involved in this, and it takes a long time to get these resolved. Here we are 10 months later, and we had to go to court. Now, what I will say is we were in touch with the executor or the representative of the estate, Mr. Greg Hamilton. He was working remotely from the state of Washington, but I believe it took us until we got into court and got to the point of defaulting them. A local attorney from Harbor, Pat Foley, got involved. He got some resources involved. I think he worked with the realtor who was here a little bit ago. So besides just the county, Mr. Hamilton, Greg Hamilton, you know, once we really pushed our efforts to the max, did cooperate, and all this work was done prior to essentially voluntarily with a lot of court paperwork on the county, but the county didn't have to spend money to pay a contractor and put a lien on the property. This was done voluntarily after our enforcement efforts, but we had to take our enforcement efforts all the way up to the courthouse steps at the 11th hour after, again, about 10 months of effort. So for everyone out there, when these things happen quickly, that, in my experience, is the exception than the rule, and they are time and labor intensive. So just ask for patience from everyone. But thanks, Mr. Grasham, and Mr. Grasham was also very helpful keeping us involved. So appreciate everybody's, and it's a group effort.
Again,
Thank you.
all.
One down, one down.
David Barnes?
Good morning, I'm David Barnes. I'd like to, what the first gentleman, Mr. Yost, was talking about, I noticed a couple weeks, right around the time that this happened, and I just spoke to the roadmaster, Mr. Christensen, and this problem seems to have begun on the south bank and north bank of Chetco right around the time that the signs went up along 101. They have those big 10-foot tall, 7 square foot signs that say, oh, no overnight camping. There's no ordinance associated with them. I've looked through Curry County rules. I've looked through Oregon rules. There's no rules say that you cannot camp on the side of the state highway. I'm wondering who had the authority to put these signs up and whether they're legal signs at all. If a police officer pulls up and tells you you can't camp here, why not? Don't you see the sign? Yes, but what ordinance is the sign enforcing? Or what statute is the sign enforcing? But it seems to me from just Mr. Christensen and I were speaking about this at the beginning and before the meeting started, and he mentioned a problem of having people coming out on county roads now because they're banned out on the state highway. So, you know, if it behooves this commission, I'd like to see you look into who put these signs up. You know, what I read in the newspaper, it came from somebody called to complain to the state police about a bag of garbage on the side of the road. So instead of having a temporary garbage on the side of the road, we have, I think there's 20 of them, maybe 24 of these signs out there that are a permanent eyesore. So for a temporary condition, we've solved it with a permanent eyesore. And I just don't think that's right. Secondly, this is the letter that Commissioner Huxley submitted at the last meeting that he didn't attend. I've read through this letter a couple of times now, and I'm just wondering, Commissioner Huxley, if you might answer. In this letter, what I'm reading, in paragraph 2 through 6, you make allegations of misconduct and failure to properly perform against the county administrator. I believe that these allegations that you make against him would be terminable, and were they to be terminable, they would disqualify him from collecting a severance package from this county. I would like to know if you intend on following through with these with the same zeal in which you have prosecuted Commissioner Boyce's violation of the travel policy, or if you're just throwing things out there and, you know, just playing with words and have no intention of following through.
I'm not going to answer any of your questions. That's not what we're here for during the public comments.
So
We need to read the policy.
I've read the policy, sir, and it doesn't say that. That was a suggestion by Mr. Schroeder a couple of months ago that you guys not make comments. You're here to serve the public. I'm the public. I'm asking you a question. You've made allegations, and a member of the public is asking you a question whether you intend to prosecute the allegations that you've made or not. And your response is, I'm not going to say anything? Hello? I'm talking to you, sir. Ma'am?
We're not, as commissioners, we do not have to respond. Your comments are for information. Certainly you've brought them forth. So thank you.
Thank God there's only 4 more months left.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes, sir.
Madam Chair, if I may, I hope you're going to be around for continuation of the travel policy. As you know, in the last general meeting, we had several people that spoke almost in shockingly disbelief of the $3,000 that the county's trying to collect from me on over and above the travel, which was primarily for emergency purposes. So, yeah, if you're going to be around, you might want to listen to.
You know, the county's trying to get $3,000 from you for traveling for emergency purposes, and Mr. Schroeder's mathematical error was more than that. So, you know, it just doesn't seem quite right to me. But it's nothing less than I expect from you. So,
Gordon Clay?
Oh, sorry.
Gordon, while you're bringing that up, if I may, wonderful article you had in the pilot last week. Thank you.
All 4 papers, including Del Norte, printed that.
Yes, thanks.
And this is a thank you. Commissioners and community members, for the record, my name is Gordon Clay from Brookings, Oregon. Remember this date, December 31st, 2016. That was a culmination of a year that saw more people in the United States kill themselves than ever any year before, 45,000. 2017 saw a record number and a big jump in Oregonians, where 825 killed themselves, 43 more than ever before. And in Curry County, 14 people killed themselves, the highest we've ever had, three more than the year before, and 5 of them were veterans. Know that we ask that you find one of our 153 locations in Curry and Del Norte County that have this holder that holds semicolon cards in it. We ask everybody to thank the owners of that location for providing these cards, and we ask you to pick up one or more and keep it in your wallet just in case you are faced with a situation or a friend is faced with a situation that might help prevent their suicide. Know that anyone can be at risk of suicide. The path to suicide is complex, and predicting it is not easy as looking for a simple cause and effect. Losing a job, being bullied, having served in the military, or having a mental health diagnosis are not causes of suicide. Resting on these assumptions can lead to missed opportunities to recognize pain and reach out to help. Early identification and intervention can be a lifesaver. Next, make your own safety plan, and I put one in there, and it's on the web. Even if you don't think you need it or you would never be suicidal, it doesn't happen that way. Suicide comes on to many people, and you would never expect it. Needless to say, we are passionate in our belief that suicides are preventable, and the prevention is a shared responsibility where every person has a potential to make a difference and save someone's life. By working together, we have a good chance of seeing the change we wish to see. 0 attempts. October is Bully Prevention Month. We support the belief that every child deserves to receive an education in a safe environment. We emphasize the importance of upstanders versus bystanders. Let's be clear, beyond the peer pressure and not to snitch and adolescent cynicism, adults matter. If our kids see us treat people with dignity, if we are outspoken about our respect for people who come forward, if we are honest on how scary reporting can be, but assume that they will be going through the process, our kids will find the courage to speak out and become upstanders. The end of bullying begins with you and us, and thank you for being part of the process in acknowledging both of these proclamations. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Gordon. I let you go a little bit further because
Yeah.
I saw you just had that much left. So.
Unfortunately, I stuttered too much.
Well, you know, I think we're all getting a day older each day, so I understand.
That is true.
Okay, next we come to the consent agenda calendar with items 1, 2, 4, and 6 taken out. So do I have a motion on the floor to accept the consent agenda with those items being taken out?
Madam Chair, I'd motion that we leave under D3, Marine Safety Officer, and D5, Mountain Special District Road District.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Call for the question?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, next we have some presentations. First of all, the Curry Community Prevention Poster Design Contest. And we got those posters. Do we have that to put up on the, so people can see the posters? Oh, we actually have the actual posters.
We have them in person.
No, I can just hold them out. That'd be fine that way.
We're here from Curry Community Health. We had an Art in the Park Day in Brookings, Port Orford, and Gold Beach. These are the winners from each city, and we are asking for a vote to pick the #1 winner. Oh, sorry, through all the county.
Okay, so probably the best way would be to get each commissioner to vote on them. They're all beautiful posters.
Yes.
And I wish we could What age were these kids that did this? Just curious. I noticed the stick figures on some of them.
This one was 9 years old.
And 11 and 8.
Okay. So I've got my mind up. I don't know about you, Commissioner Huxley.
I'm for Brooke. I think they were all good, but my choice and the age certainly indicates some further experience and growing up on it. But they were all great.
Brooke is the
But
Eat
Brooke's my
Healthy one?
choice.
I think it's this one.
That one, right in the
The
center.
wildfire?
That's correct, right in the center.
Okay, I was for the Eat Healthy one. And Commissioner Boyd?
Wildfire here, no surprise.
Okay, it looks like wildfire's winning.
Okay, great.
Thank
you. Thank
Thank you, ladies. Tell the kids they're all great.
Oh, we will.
Thank you.
They all got a bike.
They got a bike?
All yeah.
Wow. Murray Community Health must be pretty wealthy.
Thank you.
Okay, Jeremy, I think you're up next, and you're going to change the order there just a bit. Have the nationwide test first, and then the fire update second. Is that correct?
Correct.
I think we can handle that.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jeremy Dumeyer, Curry County Emergency Services Coordinator. So, just real quick, this month, September, is National Preparedness Month. Part of the preparedness, there will be a test of the Integrated Public Alert Warning System, IPAWS. That system is where you generally see the little crawler across your TV that says this is a test of the emergency broadcast system. That will go out over TV, over radio, and that is scheduled for September 20th at 11:18 a.m. What they're doing this year is something a little bit new, which is a test of the wireless alert system. That will alert cell phones that are enabled to receive alerts that there's a test of the wireless communications. That alert system will start at 11:20 on that same day. So that was what I wanted to bring to your attention so that everyone would know that we have that coming, not to worry that it's just a test of these systems.
Could I ask you just one little
Absolutely.
question? In order for people to be alerted, do they have to register with you? Because I know I hear announcements from Del Norte that people have to register. Is that
Different system.
Okay,
So this is a nationwide alert system.
okay.
What we have in Curry County is a local, and that's the Everbridge Reverse 911 system. And that's something that I think everybody in this county should sign up for. That's how we can alert you locally of an event such as evacuation notices, tsunami alerts, and things of that nature.
How are people able to sign up? What would they do?
A couple of different ways they can go about that. They can always call me. My number is 541-247-3208. I'm more than happy to help anyone out with that. They can also go on the Curry County website under the Government Sheriff Emergency Services tab. I do have that link on my page. And then there's also the Facebook page, Curry County Emergency Services Facebook. I have that link in the preparedness links.
So how many people right now are registered?
Less than half the county.
Okay, so we need to work on getting more registered?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Jeremy, if you would, you have the mouse up there, just walk people through so they can see what they're doing on that site.
Absolutely. So again, on the Curry County website, under Government, the County Sheriff, I am under the Sheriff and Emergency Services. And you just scroll down the page, and right here where it has the mass alert notification, I have the link here, a description of the Everbridge system, and again, the same link as well. And all you would do is just click on that link, choose to sign up. And the neat thing about Everbridge is you can actually choose to sign up your home phone, your cell phone, receive text, email, however you wish. This system is designed to notify you. One caveat in that. Let's say that you and your significant other have two different phones. You know, my wife and I, of course, we have our cell phones. If I register both of our numbers in Everbridge under my account and a notification is sent out and I receive the notification on my phone first, this system is designed to notify you. It will stop at that notification. So my wife would not receive the notification. So ideally, each person should register their own cell phone, telephone, however they want to be communicated to. That way everybody can get this notification firsthand.
Okay. I hated to interrupt you, but I thought it was important.
Oh, absolutely.
Make sure that
Could
people
I
know.
Could I ask
Yes.
a question?
Mhm.
What about, you know, Are there any notifications that aren't emergencies? For instance, I don't want to call it spam or junk mail, but is this going to burden people's phones with a lot of miscellaneous messages and things like that?
No. So I'll just go through this real quick. Now, I won't be able to do it without signing up. So when you go through this process and you sign up all this information, you have the choice to only receive emergency alerts.
Okay.
What I suggest is also to choose road closures, because you can do that as well.
Okay.
That is as far as it will go. It's not spam. It's not going to just notify you, hey, there's a $100 ticket
Sure.
here waiting for you
Okay.
at Fred Meyer's. But it is for emergency alerting.
Okay.
And it will only alert you on what you choose. Emergency alerts is the first one that is generic. But like I said, I would recommend selecting road closures, just because where we are in this county with the amount of road systems that we have that can go down, it's good information to have.
So I have one more question.
Okay?
I was alerted to evacuate at last year's fire.
Yes.
And I noticed I got a phone call. Does that mean I'm automatically registered in the system, or do I have to get in here and register?
You are still registered. And if there's a question as to whether or not you're registered with the Reverse 911 system, again, give me a call anytime, and I'm more than happy to look into this and see if you are registered and if it's current. That's something too, is when you register on this Everbridge system, of course you will have a login and a password to be able to go back in there and update it. If you don't update something, your phone number changes, your address changes, then this system is not 100% for you. So you need to make sure that information is always updated. And I can do that too.
Just a man of all talents.
Try to be. So with that, I do also have an update on the fires. That was the other part of the agenda. And what I've done is I've brought some representatives from the Red Team. They're the Type 1 Incident Management Team that are working on the Klondike and Taylor fires, which is currently in Curry County. So I'll pass it over to Mike Dewitt, the Incident Commander from the Southern Area Red Team.
Thank you, Jeremy.
You're not leaving, are you, Jeremy?
I'll be here.
Okay.
Let's see if I can we'll pull up a map, and I think we'll start around over on the west side where we've had some activity planned and going on. So good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for the time, and I appreciate the invitation to come address the citizens and the board. So my name's Mike Dewitt, as was mentioned. I'm the Incident Commander for the Southern Area Red Team, and we've been in place for about a week now and took over from California Team 4 at that point. So we've made it through the worst of the wind, the northeast wind event that's been going on the last 5 days. So our critical weather has subsided some. We've got a couple of dry days that we're expecting. The next 2 days not going to have a lot of wind. The atmospheric conditions are going to be such that a lot of instability, so we could get something build up in the fire that it would create its own weather. So we're watching that. The aviation assets that we've had work in the fire have been very successful in keeping the fire activity down a lot. So we're going to be utilizing those assets out there again today to keep things toned down, and we're expecting the winds to switch from the northeast, where they've been, around to the southwest later on today, and start pushing the smoke and the fire activity back the other direction. So I'll walk you around the fire as we go through that. But just looking at the weather for the next week or so, we're going to be in that westerly flow. So the winds are going to be coming off of the water. That gives us a little bit more moisture up over the fire area and keeps things a little bit subdued, keeps the smoke pushed out. So that's a good thing for everybody on this side of the fire for sure. And it looks, at least in that 7-day period, it doesn't look like we've got another east wind scenario setting up. That's always a threat at this time of year with the other systems that move in and influence that. So we'll continue to watch that into the coming days. We do have a community meeting scheduled up at Agnes tonight at 5 o'clock. That'll be going on. We continue to have our cooperators meetings down at the ICP every day at 10.
That's been very helpful for us getting up to speed on the issues that are out there and then dealing with any problems or things that we need to. Good representation, CFPA's there daily, ODF, Oregon Department of Forestry, all of the agencies from Curry and Josephine County. The Oregon National Guard has been represented daily, and then all of the contract firefighters and agency firefighters that are out there supporting all of the effort. We've been over 1,000 people now for several days, so a lot of good work has gone on up there in support of this effort. So walk everybody around the fire. These areas with the hashes in them were areas of growth yesterday, so we did have a little bit more growth over here on the west side of the fire. And this is in, let me see, this is Horsesign Creek here, and this is Collier Creek drainage. So we did have a little bit of growth on this slope, and then we had a little bit down in this pocket. As we get further down in here, we're getting into the Collier fire scar and the Chetco bar scar. So we know that there's been some heat down in here, but it's really isolated. There's not any path of escape for it. The path for the fire to continue to move to the west is up this drainage and up along this ridge line. So as the winds shift around back out of the west, we've been putting things in place. We're going to start some tactical firing here to take out this wick and take the fuels out. So that'll be a hand ignition today if the winds switch around. I'm sorry that my hand up here keeps moving, but the mouse is sliding over the table.
Very sensitive mouse. Could you maybe shrink that down a little bit?
Sure.
The map there. Great, perfect, thank you.
So that kind of give you a little bit more perspective there. So this is about a 3-mile strip between this DP drop point 640 and drop point 620 here. We're looking to get that completed today, and then there's an old line that was put in for the biscuit fire. The fire has got up to it out here and checked up. There's an old where that line was located, a slide occurred during some weather event in between that happening and the line getting installed. But we're looking to utilize that old dozer line, and it comes all the way back up here to the road system, the 410 road system, and we're looking to get that and use that as a control. This fire down in here hasn't moved a whole lot in the week that we've been here, even with the 40-mile-per-hour winds that we've had at the ridge tops. It's not that strong down in the drainages, but we feel pretty confident that we can go in here with some helicopters and continue to get that cooled off and get some crews in there to try to hold this pretty much where it's at. Coming on around the fire, this is the Silver Ridge line that runs up through there. The fire had they'd put retardant on it, and it had gotten over in a few places. It continues to back down the slope down in towards Indigo Creek, and up in the headwaters of Indigo Creek, it did get across here, and this is Fishhook Peak right here, if any of you are familiar with the area. So the fire is in these brush fields from where they burned really hot during the biscuit fire, and it makes some short runs, but we've been able to keep that in check. And then up the East Fork of the Indigo Creek is where it first got over and got established and run up to the top of this ridge as well. So we're continuing to keep this area wet down with the helicopters, and since it got established, we had 4 helicopters in there working as hard as they could go, and it still grew about 1,000 acres on us the day that it got across in there. So it was a pretty hard fight, but it was very persistent. There's just a lot of dead and down fuel intermixed with that brush that's in there, and the manzanita brush that's in there is about 30 feet tall. So whenever it gets going, it really puts off a lot of heat, and it's very resistant to the helicopters being able to do anything with it. So we are looking at having to do some firing. We're looking at utilizing this road. It's a road system that comes down in here. This is the 150 road, and get this buttoned up. And we're trying to keep it as far out of Agnes as we can, and that looks like that's got a high probability of success.
So I have one question.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
got some comments from a couple of individuals in the public. They were worried about these fires that you're going to be starting to clear out. How safe are they? Just curious.
They're safer than the fire running at you. You know, we've held off on them till the wind gets at our back. We've been waiting on this westerly flow to be able to get in there and get them done so that the wind's pushing the smoke and the embers and stuff back into the area that is going to be the fire side. Are they foolproof? No, but they're definitely on our terms, and we've got a lot of support equipment and support people to be able to deal with any spots that we get.
Control it?
That's our plan, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not going to give you a guarantee, but they're a lot higher probability of success than waiting on the fire to run to the top of the ridge and then dealing with the spots that come over it.
Yeah, some of these individuals that talked to me were affected greatly
I
by
understand.
the fire last year. So.
Yes, ma'am. So the fires, the easternmost flank of the fire over here has shown a little bit of growth, but it's been very slow. The winds have been pushing against it, so that helps it from spreading. But we've run ignition models on all of this stuff to see what the future is going to hold with the weather that's predicted, the characteristics that the fire have had over the 50 or so days that it's been on the landscape. So our models are tuned, and we've been able to recreate exactly what the fire's done and running that with the predicted weather over the next few days. It's just, this is going to continue to try to spread upslope, but it's going to be very slow in doing so. So we feel like we're going to be successful in keeping this knocked down with the helicopters. We've looked for numerous opportunities to try to go into some of this country in here with crews, and it's just, it's not that you can't go in there, but if somebody breaks a leg or somebody gets injured down in there, getting them out of there would be next to impossible in a lot of places. So it's just, the risk is not worth the reward, because we feel like we can continue to keep a check on it with aircraft and keep this from spreading. I won't say that we won't ever have to get out here to where these roads have been prepared to fire along them, along the Bear Camp Road, but I think the likelihood is very low that it would ever do that. We can utilize those road systems that come in here on these ridge systems to narrow the footprint of the fire, and that's what we're going to try to do, is keep it as small as we can, and keep working it with the aviation assets. As many of these westerly flows as we get in here, the cloud banks, when they set up over there, it just helps bring that fuel moisture up, and it certainly slows the progress of the fire down. So that's kind of an overview of what we're doing. Let me zoom it a little bit more. Good. And kind of give you the what we've been delegated to deal with is that yellow line in there. So those are the areas that we've been dealing with, is this side of the fire where there's been some heat. The east side of the Klondike fire, they transitioned from a Type 2 to a Type 3 team yesterday, and they're continuing to do some suppression repair and cleanup work over there that needs to be done, and they'll have a presence over there for quite a while. And then the Taylor fire up here is in the same shape. There's a little bit of growth on some of the pockets, but again, it's isolated areas that's either got a burn scar all the way around it from this year, or some of the stuff working on some pockets down into the Chetco scar from a couple of years ago.
Well, and I noticed in the email updates that it's 42% contained now, so that's...
Yes, ma'am. Well, actually 46.
46
we went up a little bit. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Commissioner Boyce?
That's the percent of containment doesn't mean a lot to me, and I can explain why. But if you would, Mr. Dewitt, go back to 25% there, and let's talk about the burning a little bit. Early this morning, 6 o'clock, got some good answers from some of your people. A little bit, yeah, back to the plus. There you go. A little bit of the confusion I have, right about where it has DP 640, Game Lake area, you see the peak there. I think you have 3 bulldozers ready to go there? Okay. And that's not wilderness.
That's correct.
And so you have operators ready to go, and you're not concerned for their safety in there, because that's a really a considerable good road.
It is.
Not a good choice of words there, Mike. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Type, you know, the hotshot crews, and they're going to be in there. That's 60 per crew.
20 per crew.
20? Excuse me. So it'd be 3 crews is what you have. Great.
Correct.
And so Commissioner Gold referenced a letter that she got and concern, and you know, the less than the week that you've been here, I think I've tried to communicate some of the apprehension, some of the anxiety that people have, and kind of what you're up against. And I'll read something to you here in just a minute. It'll take just a moment. And so, is on the perimeter of the fire there, Mr. Dumeyer and I were calculating this morning, it's still 2,200 acres that it has grown in that 50-day period that you referenced, and on the average, 2,200 acres per day. And he reminded me that a lot of this is not in Curry County, but of course it affects us greatly.
Sure.
And so that's why we're hearing from people, and that burdens you to, as Commissioner Gold said, you know, I don't think she was asking for a guarantee, but anytime you talk, and I know I think that's your background, is prescribed burning, which, you know, we understand is sometimes less risk, often less risk than you know, as you just mentioned a minute ago, fire coming at you. So that's about between DP 640 and 620. That's about 3 miles. Do I have that correct?
That's correct.
And so if that's successful, and that, again, that's where the local folks are. I mean, we did, again, lose 11, 12 houses last year. We have great protection now, but that doesn't help them in the past. So we're trying to deal with that. And I mentioned that to your large group this morning at 6 o'clock. And so my question is this. We are looking at this, and we are just asking with everything we got, and as you've heard me say in the past few days, and I know you are listening, and I get that assurance from other parts of the team. You're listening carefully, your team is listening carefully, and obviously we want to give you all the support we can. It's a new day compared to the hand we were dealt last year, and the hand that you have. So just to hear you say we're going to try and keep this as small as possible, the acreage, I mean, we've had some reasonable, not unrealistic predictions. It could be another 200 or even 250,000 acre fire. And so when people hear that and they want to prepare for that, then again, that anxiety level goes up. And so this effort you're putting right here, give me just a little more background on if that works and where you see that, how that's going to benefit your overall strategy and planning for the remainder of the fire.
So, you know, this thing's continued every day that we've been here to move to the west. We've thrown a lot of helicopters and air tankers out here just to keep it, and in spite of that, it's continued to push out here. So we don't feel like there's any way that we can stop it before it gets to that road. Yeah, we can't put people in there. It's just in a bad spot. So.
But excuse me, you can put them on the line though.
We can put them on the line. Correct. Yeah,
and
we can
trying to keep it from leaping over their heads to the west side.
That's right.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
So, and that's why we've been waiting on the winds to switch around out of the west, so that we don't have them to watch so hard for the embers going over their head and throw something beyond them. And we do have backup lines if we had to fall back to that. We've got a contingency lines, and you know there's been still a lot of preparation going on back here, but we feel like now's the time that this will be successful. And taking out, that's 3 miles long and about a mile wide, so about a 2,000 acre total footprint in there to get this piece reconnected, and then we've got an anchor point on it. It's anchored into the Collier fire scar. That the fire, it's not that it won't burn it all in there, but it won't spread readily in there. It's a very good barrier. And then this gives
me this morning that there's some deep timber in there, and what you're hoping for is to burn that ground fuel, which would be more like a natural burn.
Correct.
Normal burn cycle, which is part of your background and experience.
Correct.
And so if that works, that'll save those trees.
It will.
And it'll be a low, as Mr. Dumeyer reminded me this morning, a low and a slow burn.
That's right. Low intensity firing operations.
3 miles by 1 mile.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yep. And then the same thoughts, the same process would be when we have to light this section in here, because this fire is going to continue to work up Fish Hook Creek and work around the back side of it. So this gives us that same barrier, fire going downhill, going slow, burning underneath the timber. So it's a lot less stressful on those trees, and it doesn't take the tops of them out. And that's and then we can work that down with the helicopter and to help support that, to get these side ridges to where everything's coming down evenly and nothing gets ahead and gets underneath and then makes a run back up to the top. So it's a process that we utilize a lot in prescribed fire, but what we're trying to do is mimic the natural process that fire does on the landscape.
One more thing about the helicopters. The retardant that you used on the ridge that kind of runs east-west above the Silver Fire, that's most of what the helicopter activity is. And also on the ridge running north-south west of the DP 620 there, that road.
Correct.
You're putting a lot of, on that ridge right there,
Right.
the spike camp, you're putting a lot of retardant on that.
We've already painted it. There's only one piece down below Saddle Mountain that we didn't get treated, and they're planning to do that today. But again, the winds are going to switch around and not be blowing embers across that. So the conditions are very favorable for that operation.
You're putting that retardant on so that
Ahead
in
of time.
case it jumps, we're not going to have a
It
problem.
just widens that buffer. There's just there's a dozer width line that goes through there, so that gives us 30 to 60 more feet of width of control line to catch anything that were to spot over there short range. And then a lot of this is brush up there from past fires, so it's we can get to it with the helicopters and knock it down. And we'll have whenever we're doing any of these ignitions, we'll have the helicopters up to support that. So if we do get a spot, they can jump on it really quick. And we've got the drone up with the hour camera, so that they can pick up any heat sources, and they'll be watching in that green as well. So it's we got a lot of eyes looking at it.
Mr. Boyce?
No DC-10s yesterday, today possibly?
Possibly, yeah. The air was just too smoked in
Yeah.
where we needed the drops yesterday. So if we get we need to put a little bit below Saddle Mountain, and we need to put a little along this ridge system here, and we're going to try to do that today if we get the clearance.
It was about 8 days ago that we had all the resources come in, including the hotshot crews.
Correct.
Are you anticipating, or is there any, I want to say, fierce competition for those resources now that you're struggling with, and any way we can help on that?
Now the whole situation across the whole West is moderated some. There's only 15 Type 1 and Type 2 incident command teams out. So and we're still ranked the second highest priority in the nation. So that helps us to get in the GAC and our
DIC is second highest priority.
correct.
Thank you.
So we're getting anything that our orders are getting filled.
We just want to get the hotshot crews in there and one foot in the black as
Yep.
quick as we can.
Yes, sir.
I want to read something and then let you respond if you want to. I'm not saying I agree or disagree with what I'm going to read. We'll just take a one. Commissioner Huxley, did you have questions? I'm sorry, I could do this.
I'll wait till you're through.
Okay.
Mine's just going to be a compliment, basically, to you, to all the individuals, not just the commanders, and to the reports that are coming out. You can't control the weather, but you're certainly doing an outstanding job of updating the people or the public and giving them as much or as little information as they want
Correct.
to dig in, because I can pull these maps up myself.
Sure.
Do I understand them all? Some,
Yeah,
you know, and I've seen some. You mentioned these hot spots. I've talked in the past fire to the interpreters. That was a mistake, but I ended up calling one of the numbers, woke the guy up in Alaska. That's where he was working out.
Correct.
And he just took the time, you know, to educate me. And there they were having some pretty severe winds. And he was showing me hot spots 7 miles past the perimeter. 7 miles. So they're you guys are on top of it. You do an outstanding job, and you don't. I'm not going to second guess you. I wouldn't dare to do that. I just
Thank
would.
you.
I would dare to compliment you.
Thank you very much.
I'll just say ditto to Commissioner Huxley. Commissioner Boyce, you want to
I've
say
already
something?
complimented you more than once and your team, and a huge thanks. Quickly, this gentleman is representing a lot of people, and he has had the experience of the largest fire in Oregon history, the Biscuit Fire, 500,000 acres, and then, of course, the Silver Fire was almost 180,000 acres, and then last year's fire. So we're getting it 2 years in a row, as you know, and we've had that communication, and I think you've been genuinely sensitive to that. But here's his in evaluating the chances, and I know you're only going to be here another 10 days. We're working on public policy to change that to 21 for future fires for Oregon, as we might see you again, but we're not going to let you stay just 2 weeks. So his evaluation of the chances are a wind event between now and even December 31st, probably high. And so you mentioned, and I think it's absolutely accurate to say, the east winds of, we have this window now, and every day we get into September, the more likely we'll have rain. Not a good chance right now, but people are very concerned about an Indian summer, meaning sometimes we've had these east warm winds come out of, that are just, headed straight towards the coast.
Right.
And so we're back to, this time it would be Gold Beach probably that would be at risk. Chance of Klondike fire escaping towards Agnes, Carpenterville, or Kate Road, and that's why I didn't want to quite let it go. The statistic of 8,000 acres has grown in the last 3 days, despite 8/31 through 9/3, the tremendous air support that you worked with and pulled that off, and that is greatly noteworthy. And he writes here, chances of utter chaos ensuing from an uncontrolled fire. So your background gives me some confidence, and I think that 3 mile by 1 mile again is I think you're managed well, and I'm getting additional confidence with the bulldozers and, of course, the hotshot crews. And the last one here, chance of structure community protection under ODF. We are doing really well on that. Agnes is looking better every day, and I'm gonna be trying to help you see where Gold Beach might be at risk. Not at this point. I'm not really concerned, but as Agnes becomes less exposed, move it towards Gold Beach. And we're not. If the public is concerned about Brookings, I think we're very low risk there, especially on the south. You want to come to the Chetco Bar, the north Bear Camp Road, east Chrome Ridge, and west Wild Horse. So, but that also gives people some huge concern that if we do expand it out, that's where you're, to those 4 locations could be, 250,000 acre fire. And if we have the weather that's not helpful to you and your teams coming in the days ahead, that is a huge concern. And that's our Illinois River watershed, and I'll leave all the rest of it alone. I think that's it, and thank you. And I'm sorry we didn't get you on until 45 minutes, but I know you've got and also the 1,000-member crew. That's I know you're in charge of all that and responsible for. And just keep working with us as you have been. Much appreciated. Also, ODF, I call it Coos Curry Force Protecting. And welcome back, Georgia. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and thank
you.
all of the firefighters in the effort and supporting cast. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Appreciate your work. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the regular agenda. Resolution to commence process to vacate county-owned road.
Madam Chair, we're going to pick up items number 1, 2, 4, and 6 from the consent agenda.
Oh, don't mind me. Okay, number 1, minutes from the workshop of May 9th, 2018. So, Commissioner Huxley, I believe you were the one that asked for this to be taken out.
Yes, there are inaccuracies. We've discussed this the last time we had minutes, and
I'm sorry, which one are we on, Madam Chair?
D1.
Thank you, Mr. Yost.
I'm not going to go into details because I don't believe there's any purpose served, but I will, later, include again into the record what the minimum requirements of minutes are supposed to be per Oregon statute. And as I said, in the last one when I did that, they're not being met. So I just pulled it because I would vote no on both of these minutes, and I didn't want to vote no on the items that we kept in the consent calendar. So that was my reason for it.
Okay.
Same reason.
Are you looking for a motion to approve the minutes, Madam
Yeah,
Chair?
items 1 and 2.
I move that we approve the minutes of May 9th and August 22nd, Madam Chair.
And I will second that. Any further discussion? Call for the question?
Aye.
No.
Aye. Okay, then number 4, Commissioner Huxley, appointment of Budget Committee. Carl King?
Again, we addressed this, the count and the years of the appointments. They were wrong on the last meeting that we talked about it. They're still wrong. So look, if you, on the agenda routing slip for the Budget Committee appointment, it shows the 3 members. Brand ends, I'm about halfway down on the sheet, June 30 of 2019. That is correct. King ends 6/30 with this new appointment 2020. That's not correct. It has to be 21 in order to be 3 additional years on top of his original 3 years.
Okay.
And Bill Ostrowski, who this was also addressed the last time we went through this, was incorrect. It's still incorrect. It's showing Bill Ostrowski as ending 6/30/2021. But if you go to, again, Bill's first year was May of 2018. Then go, because that's where we had the budget hearings.
Right.
It goes to June, but let's just call it May of 2018, number 1. May of 2019, number 2. May of 2020, number 3. May of 2021, number 4. So 221 is not correct. We still need to correct 2 of the 3 because they're incorrect.
Could we make an adjustment here?
Madam Chair, I'm trying to line this up so that there are staggered term ends. Brand at 19. I'm with the new order assigning King to end on 20, and the order which you guys approved ends Ostrowski's on June 30th of 21. And so here's the order. You approved it to end on 21. And so I'm just going to live with that order and assign King to end on 20, and then we'll address, as we go forward, we'll address the issue with if Brand wants to be reappointed, for next year. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Simple.
So, Carl King, did you?
I have served on 3 budgets. I was appointed in March of the first year I served because the Board of Commissioners ignored the vacancy that started the previous June, in part because Mr. Spicer, my memory is, was starting to think of closing down his practice and moving to Hawaii, which he has since done. But I have only served on 3 budgets. If you appoint me as in that order, I will have been appointed twice to 3-year terms and served on only 5 budgets. You're counting 1 year twice. You have the 4th year of my first appointment is now going to be the 1st year of my 2nd appointment. I'm getting old enough. I don't want to age 2 years in 1 year.
Oh, come on.
You don't have to worry.
So, with all due respect, Mr. Huxley is right. I should be
So what could we do to adjust this?
just
Make yours
change the year and the
21?
order, make it 21. That gives me my 6 budget cycles.
Okay. Commissioner Huxley?
Okay, the committee members are to serve 3-year terms.
Correct.
And they're to be staggered, just like planning commission members. We need 2 wrongs don't make a right. We need, as I thought we were going to do when we talked about this some weeks ago, we need to correct the one for Bill Ostrowski and change that in the order from a 4-year, which was incorrect, to a 3-year, and set it correctly, which would make it 2020. We need to make an order to correct, I think, so that we have the paper trail proper, to correct the original mistake for, which I thought was what we were going to do, for Carl King to make the 4-year appointment 3 years, and then to make this new appointment for 3 years, so then everything's in sync.
Okay, so bottom line, what we need to do is change King to 21 and Ostrowski to 20.
Correct.
Okay, so could we do that today instead of going through another meeting to do it? Commissioner Huxley?
I think we could just direct staff, we could approve that with this discussion and direct staff to prepare the proper paperwork to implement that, and then everything's in sync and every term is for 3 years as it's supposed to be.
You know what? I think this would be a real easy fix with the word processor. Just go in there and change King to 21, Ostrowski to 20, and then we'll be good to go. So.
Well, Ostrowski, you'd have to basically resend an order number 20499 and then come up with a new order.
Okay, so I think we could do that.
Okay.
And we wouldn't be able to approve it today, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so we can come back.
Yeah,
no
we
big
come
deal.
back then.
Why wouldn't we be able to approve it today?
Well, we
Commissioner
could
Huxley?
direct staff to do that, and then we can also approve appointing King today, and then we can sign the paperwork when it comes back to us, unless the county council has any other suggestions on that. We can approve
I'm
the
just trying to
appointment
make it
today and then put
quick.
it and follow with the paperwork. Is that?
Council Huddle, do you have anything to weigh in on this?
Commissioner Boyce had his hand
Heavy
up.
matter. Commissioner Boyd?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I want to vote for Mr. King for another 3 years, but I'm uneasy not having it right before me and the public and a good path to follow. I mean, I'm the last one to slow the process down. We're still going to get him for the plenty of time for the October 31st meeting. So I would rather do this incrementally, and I think we're obligated to do that. That's just my opinion.
Why don't you just table it?
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll table it,
Well,
direct staff to make
well,
the
your turn.
corrections. How's that?
Sure. So on this item, what it sounds like, it's going to be continued to the next board meeting with instructions to staff to rescind the prior order appointing Ostrowski to 21,
Right.
bring back an order with King in 21 and Ostrowski in 20.
Good. I think we've
Okay.
got it. Let's do it.
So that'll come back next meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Moving on. Road Department Street
Nope.
Fix.
Madam Chair, number
Nope,
6.
Sorry about that. Number 6. Remove Commissioner Boyce from OPTIS, Oregon Public Transit Information System.
That was one that I also requested be pulled, and it had in part to do with the paperwork. I'm not sure why Commissioner Boyce requested to be removed. That's really here nor there, but I didn't see any paperwork in the form of an order to
I think
do this.
because I was put on the Transit District Committee.
Thank you.
Yeah, she's already appointed the transit
But,
committee. There's
but
already
you
been an
need,
order.
you need a paper trail when you start switching liaisons to these different districts, don't you?
I think we already had that paper trail the last meeting.
I think optics is slightly different from the transit committee.
Okay, so could we,
You're looking, so is Commissioner Huxley looking for an order documenting the change of commissioners to Optus?
Yes, as far as a trail, yeah.
okay, so why don't we do that next meeting?
Okay. I
Have to do that?
Yeah, I basically, in my mind, it would be in the minutes, it'd be recorded in the minutes, and it would basically, you'd be assigned to a liaison until you're not, and I didn't feel there was a need for an order.
Because I went to a transit meeting yesterday, and she said, you'll be doing this, is that okay? I said, sure, that's part of the meeting today.
Yeah.
I think there needs to be a paper trail.
Yeah, I agree. We should have a paper trail. And why don't we just direct you to do the paper trail? I'm certainly happy to serve on this committee. Commissioner Boyce?
We just answered one of the two reasons that I wanted to remove the agenda, to make sure that you're okay with that, because I didn't have anything that said, and that was my recommendation because you were appointed to that committee. It's a very important committee. I don't want the public to think, though, that I've lost interest. It's a considerable amount of work, but yet it's very important. And I didn't care for the word personally myself, says move to remove Commissioner Boyce. Could we just say trying to replace or something like that? You know, it gives the appearance that maybe I need to be removed, not doing my job or something, because I was very dedicated to this.
Well,
so.
we're just like trading places, no big deal.
Okay. How about, that's good. So as Commissioner Huxley said, you will be the new liaison to the Oregon Public Transit Information System, along with, okay, great, thank you.
So they're going to
And we'll
come
vote
back
on that next
at
week?
the next
Yeah,
meeting.
and we'll have the
right?
paper trail
Okay.
next meeting. How's that?
Take out the word remove.
Think
I
we're
will,
ready
I will
to-
just, for the edification, sometimes minutes work. Sometimes people like Optus want the document to show that the board did the activity. And around here, sometimes it's quicker to get an order than to get minutes prepared and approved as well. So sometimes an order has a benefit besides just minutes.
Okay. Well, how about we just do both, and then we'll be covered. They call it CYA or something like that. Commissioner Huxley?
Well, to that comment, when you have an order, you have something that's easily referred back to. Can you imagine trying to keep track of what was done by minutes that may be years
Sure.
coming?
No,
I mean, it would
yep.
be...
And just two examples on some of the escrows we're in on the college with the Brookings Head Start, as well as the Brookings Airport. We actually had the board in their orders appoint me with signature authority, and the title company wanted to see both those orders. So again, sometimes the orders are not just for our benefit to track, but for other people to approve. So anyway, that's just a
Okay, so we'll bring that back at the next meeting. I think we're finally down to the regular agenda. Resolution to commence process to vacate county-owned road in Pacific City subdivision. Petition initiated, and I think, Richard, did you want to speak to that, or?
I could speak to it, Madam Chair.
Good.
Essentially, this is one of the statutory steps for the vacation process in the statutes. And essentially, a landowner has requested, petitioned us to vacate the road. And the next step is for the board to order the roadmaster to prepare a report on the petition and give the county analysis on the future purposes and utility of the segment of road. And also then we have a public hearing on the action. So that's what the next steps will be. The roadmaster will present the board with his report at the next meeting, just for informational purposes. And then I think it's scheduled for September or October. Anyway, there's a date in there for when the hearing will be. So really, there's a statutory procedure. It's not a decision to vacate. It's just saying, let's take the next step, set a hearing. We'll have a hearing. We have also taken the extra step in this order to require us to give mail notice by mail to the people who will be affected by this, so that even though it's not required by the statute, because we don't want a repeat of some of our past things that have happened. So that's all I had on this, and just requesting the board move to approve the order.
Madam Chair, I'm going to move that we accept staff recommendation here to adopt a resolution initiating.
No resolution, thank you. I said order. Never mind, go ahead.
I'm going to use the word
You are
initiating,
correct. Yep.
vacating and not vacation
Okay.
process, and holding public hearing.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, I'm just going to ask one question. When we're vacating that property and it goes back to an individual landowner, does that landowner have to pay the county for that, or just curious?
The general answer is no, they don't.
Okay, we just like give it away?
Yeah, and this property, it would probably cost more to figure out how much it's worth than what it's worth.
Yeah, I noticed it was in Forest Lake. So.
Well, it's not just that it's in Forest Lake. It's very fractional, marginal strips of alley right-of-way.
Okay, so we're better off just taking it off our county land, owned land, correct?
Right. I think the value we'll get is it'll become taxable.
I like that.
Enough to...
Okay.
Administrator
Schroeder?
Just for the board's edification, there are other pieces of property that are not roads in the Flores Lake area where people have expressed interest to me to buy, and I'm working on that process. That is a different process than a road vacate.
Mm-hmm.
And so that we will actually be selling to the individuals because they're actually platted out lots. A road is different.
And then once those pieces of property are sold, what happens? I'm just for the edification of the public here. That profit that we make or whatever will be split among all the special districts.
It's my understanding it'll be split amongst the special districts. The question we have not answered yet is, would it be split upon the districts that were enacted when the property was platted, or does it go to all the ones that are currently here right now? And I'm
including the new ones.
Including the new ones. So that's just a nuance within that, but we're moving forward at least to. I got 2 properties I'm very interested in moving forward.
Okay.
And I'll bring that to the board's attention.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor and a second. Any further discussion? Call for the question?
Aye.
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 Okay, Road Department Street Picks Contract Approval. Richard Christensen, Roadmaster, yes.
Just a comment, the documents are reversed, the numbers. So if
I was going to say, where did we come up with those?
But on the F11, which is the road department, on the Google online, that's document 12, not 11, and document 12, the Citizens Revenue Task Force, is document 11.
Okay.
So somebody going to that is going to have to flip them.
Okay, Richard, did you want to speak to this?
Morning, Madam Chair and fellow commissioners. What we're trying to do is, since the year 2000, every 3 years, we have a vehicle that goes down all 224 miles of our roads, gravel and paved, and they video record all our right-of-way. So we're able to work from our offices and see sideways, look down roads, down alleys, look down ditches, look at bridges, rails, and we could work from our office instead of driving to the far reaches of the county to take care of our work. And so this has started since 2000, every 3 years, and the contract needs to be renewed so we can get the work done again this year.
I'm going to ask you a question just to help you along. I noticed that in doing that evaluation, you would know how to prioritize fixing the roads, the various things that need to be fixed. Is that correct? False? True?
Somewhat, yes. We actually do we're in the process right now where we're actually driving down each road and reviewing the roads and getting out of the vehicles and looking at the roads, all the cracks and all the maintenance issues, and we're rating the roads right now. And that's done differently, but a lot of things that happen is people cut in a new driveway to our road.
we could go back historically and show that that driveway was never there, and it just showed up between, 2018 and 2015, and we could abate that, and we have it documented. So there's different things like that, and we can see where maybe a customer planted a tree causing a vision situation. We show, hey, that was there, and it helps us do abatements. And
So then it's up to them to pay for whatever damages or whatever are done, correct?
correct.
Okay, good. Commissioner Huxley?
What's the process used? Is this done via land vehicle? Is this done via aircraft? Is it done via a combination of?
I believe it's done with a car that has like a rotary video recorder, and as it's going down the road, it videos everything 360 degrees.
Well, it's like the Google thing that we saw around here a couple, 3 years ago.
I believe so.
Okay, interesting.
And so our staff could sit in their office, and it'd be like they're in a vehicle, and they could drive down that road as fast as they want to get to the area that they want, and then they could stop and look around and see what all the conditions were back in 2000, 2003, 2006, all the way up to now with this work that's being done this year.
So bottom line, it makes it more efficient for your office. Is a cost savings in
Yes.
the long run? Okay.
Yeah, it saves gas and time.
Okay, good. So do we have a motion to approve this street picks contract?
Chair, I'll motion to approve as presented. I think it was for $16,500. Is that correct? Or
Correct.
Okay.
Do we have a second?
Second, Madam Chair.
Any further discussion? Could we also include with that motion the signature authority?
Amend it to include signature authority for the roadmaster.
Fine here.
So call for the question?
Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, next we have Citizens Revenue Task Force, Administrator Schroeder.
County Board approved creation of a task force to study possible revenue scenarios for Curry County in 2017. The committee was never convened, and the county administrator is recommending that the board seek committee members to appoint. With that, there's a proposed press release that I basically would put out, and we would collect applications for this committee with a deadline of September 25th and appoint members to this committee on October 3rd.
Okay, and then is it true that you already have some applications that were turned in but never?
There's a couple applications that have been turned in already in JJ's file, 2. Yep. And then we would just add to that for anybody that is in the community that would be interested in, in trying to help guide us.
And I think that's really important that we have it sanctioned rather than just offshoots and so forth. So, Commissioner Huxley?
Well, this started before December of last year, but in December of last year is when there was a presentation for the December 6, 2017 meeting. And what the recommendation was, there was an older press release, we basically changed the dates. No, there was little to no interest, and we're bringing it back 8 months later. Do we expect, are we bringing it back because we expect different results, or what happened in the interim 8 months? I mean, this was before Administrator Schroeder was ever here.
Well,
So there's been some a group that has been meeting and studying consumption tax, and they've been meeting, unofficially more or less, and they're asking staff time of either myself or Councilor Huddle. And we feel if we're going to be asking and utilizing staff time, the committee should be sanctioned by the county board as an official committee that we can justify spending staff time on. And so I think there is more interest than there was before.
I think so too.
If I could, Madam Chair, there's also another committee studying another option, I think, which is a lodging tax, or aside
Right,
from that.
and that could be all part of the...
Not sure.
Part of the thing.
And then the only question I had on this press release, it says meetings will be held at the convenience of the task force members. I really think having regular meetings established, this will be now subject to the public records and meeting law. So it'll require notice, opportunity for public attendance, those kind of things. So I really think that, having a regular meeting schedule would be the first item of business for the task force, so that then if it's going to be staffed and minutes and notices, that then it can be easier to comply with the public record and meeting laws. So that would be the only thing I would recommend changing. But again, I think the first order of business of any group is for them to elect elect their officers and set their meetings and stuff.
I will change the notice to reflect as such.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Just a question for Council Huddle. Did you feel like there was a demand for your time on this? Actually, maybe through the TLT. You had to spend some time.
I've had Ron Crook, I think, he's talked to me, but then I also feel like I was invited to one of the the consumption tax meetings as well, and I said it's really not an assignment for me. It's not county business. I don't see myself doing that. So until there's board direction, and then then this is a step in that direction.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Okay, so do we have a motion on the floor to set up a citizens review task force and accept applications?
I have a question, just briefly. Would this task force have a board liaison, or would it not? In other words, for instance, the Planning Commission, a board member doesn't usually attend that. What does the board see the role of the board, or is it just let these people work and come back to the board?
Well, I thought there was something in here. It was explicit in when I read back in December, the December memo for the December 6th meeting. In this case, it was from the interim administrator. I'll just read it. Recommendation number 2, this was on page 1, or staff support number 3 under recommendation. Staff supported is my recommendation that the BOC, Board of Commissioners, or other elected officials not participate in or even attend any CRTF, that's what, Citizens Revenue Task Force meetings, and then it went on. So that was a recommendation back in December of last year.
And this looks like it's the same committee.
Exactly the same.
All right.
It sounds to me like what we're doing here is just putting this committee into action. It was never implemented. We were looking for applications, which we got several, and
we got 2. There was never enough. There was never enough interest originally.
We only got 2 applications, I
3
think.
or 4. I thought there
There's
were more.
2.
I could be wrong.
Not very many.
So I answer your
that answered
question?
mine. Those materials weren't included in the packet, so I just wanted to have that be a point of discussion.
So just,
Mr. Boyce?
thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make sure I understand. So if we pass this, then no commissioners can be involved in this committee? Is that right?
Unless the commission wants to make a change and vote on that.
I think. Correct, that was the intent.
So if
the
we could,
recommendation.
my reluctance is that we could actually lose, if this committee doesn't really click, we could actually lose a couple, 3 more months, which would then put us in the 2-year category where we've absolutely accomplished nothing on finding additional revenue sources. I would like to, that's why I was encouraging Administrator Schroeder. I didn't initially ask for board approval, but he brought that to my attention, which I think was good and certainly proper. but he also contributed to that committee. So now he's in a little bit of a bind, and if I can't participate, then you know, the process. Okay, I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Huxley?
I on record, and I'm just reiterate, I'm on record, you know, on any of these should be via an initiative process. Okay, we don't need a majority of 2 members of the governing body ultimately passing these things, because when we do, we have the results that we've had for the last 15 years, 0 successful
So what you're saying is
measures.
let these committees continue and let them get in.
Well, I'm saying, you know, to do this, well, that's what I'm in support of, I always have been, but if we're going to approve, which we did originally back in last year, but there were no signature, no or little to no applications. If we're going to do that, I'm okay with that, but I don't think we should. I think we should go with what that recommendation was and not have commissioner involvement at that time. We want to hear from the citizens, not from commissioners.
Commissioner Boyd?
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's actually significant documentation, Commissioner Huxley, that prior to being elected, you made a considerable effort to let the public know that you would be working on additional revenue sources. So, you know, if you don't want me to participate, perhaps you could participate in this committee. And I think with your background, maybe that would be a benefit to the county. Focus is, we don't have a spending problem, we have a revenue problem, and there isn't none of us, correct me if I'm wrong, are in favor of any kind of property tax increases, at least not for our time in office, maybe 2 or 3 years. So, am I correct on that?
Commissioner Huxley?
Provide some documentation or authority, you know, supporting your statement that what you say I was in support of.
Gladly, sir. But here's your chance
So
to set the record straight for the public. The 3.5 years you've been here, if you felt like that was a necessary part of your job description and responsibility to find additional revenue sources.
We're getting distracted here, Chair.
No, would you please answer the question,
So
sir?
the statement was made, I asked for a supporting source, okay, to support that, but my recommendation is to pursue what was recommended back December 6, 2017.
You think, sir, the county needs additional resources
So that's
and
my
funding?
comment.
You answer my question.
Okay, let's get back
Maybe
to
we
the
can move
committee
on.
thing.
Thank you, Chair.
You know, if a commissioner were to serve, I would be happy to do so, simply because I think I'm a little more neutral between the two, and so I would be happy to do that if...
Well, I'd also be happy, Madam Chair, and I've also spent considerable time on this, and so are you uncomfortable with me being on that committee, or at least listening in, or hopefully being able to contribute, if in fact we're not going to authorize Administrator Schroeder to be involved, which I think is a key part of his job. The biggest issue we face, well, no, it's one of 10 huge issues we face.
How about this? If a commissioner's not involved, then definitely I would think that Administrator Schroeder should be involved.
I would support that, ma'am.
And report back. And that originally was not foreboding, was it?
No, the only prohibition was on commissioners being involved or
That's what I
attending.
thought. Okay, so do I have a motion to get applications for this committee with the understanding that Administrator Schroeder will be involved and then report back to us?
You have consensus from me?
Well, then give me a motion, please.
Oh, were you looking for a motion? I'm sorry.
Yes, that's what I said.
So moved, Madam Chair. As you outlined on your...
I'll second that, and again, refer back to the conversations we've had in the prior recommendation.
Right. And you agree with the recommendation that Administrator Schroeder be involved, but not necessarily the commissioner?
Ultimately going to be involved if we're directing staff to do something.
Exactly.
So I think that's...
Okay. So we've got a second,
So,
we've got a motion.
I want to know if commissioners are prohibited from sitting in on these meetings, and on what process that would be legally binding.
Commissioner
Yes,
Huxley?
that was not to answer that question, because I'm not going to answer, his question. I'm just going to read again the recommendation that my recommendation that the BOC or other elected officials not participate in or even attend any meeting for the Citizens Revenue Task Force. That's the language. That's what I support.
Probably the reasoning for that is...
That's what I support.
They wanted the public to
Exactly.
be totally involved.
Exactly.
So I'm going to oppose that then, Madam Chair, because I'm very concerned work won't get done.
Okay, so we do have a motion on the floor. We do have a second. I'm going to call for the question.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Okay. So moving on, we've got the travel policy ordinance. Mr. Huddle. Do you want
Actually, I'll start off with this.
Okay.
So we were moving forward. The county board had adopted a travel policy in the fall of 2017 to limit travel of commissioners, or to at least follow a budget for the commissioners. It was noticed that Commissioner Boyce had violated that policy in December. A warning letter was sent to him by Interim Administrator Hitt. Further violations of this policy were observed in May. Interim Acting Administrator Huddle issued a second warning letter. Enforcement of this policy was directed from the county board to the current administrator, myself, in June. In researching to enter a citation for Commissioner Boyce for violating the travel policy, the court administrator has said that enforcing a policy in the county needs to be an ordinance. Even though we have an enforcement ordinance in Article 10 basically stipulates that any policy or rule or procedure that the county has can be enforced via the ordinance of the enforcement Article 10. They didn't feel that they felt it might be problematic for us to enter a citation for indirectly through an enforcement ordinance via a policy. In order to remedy this issue, if the board wants to continue down this path to do this, we would need to change the travel policy to a travel ordinance. This would effectively make it a ordinance that would have numbers that would be entered in a citation if a violation was found on the travel policy. With that, I also just wanted to make one clarification concerning an update on small claims court. The board had also instructed myself to try to recoup excess spending from Commissioner Boyce from last year's travel. Finance Director Kallstrom had put together some numbers for us. Basically, the commissioner's travel budget was budgeted for $4,700 for fiscal year 17-18. Actual expenditures were $10,913. We are estimating that we can claim $700 back for emergency travel. So we're going to claim $700, and we're expecting to get that, but that's not positive yet. We haven't got confirmation that they'll reimburse us for that $700, but that was the emergency travel portion that will be reimbursed. That leaves actual expenditures of $10,213, less the $4,700, which was budgeted. There's an excess travel budget of $5,513. Unless something changes, that will be what will be try to recoup in small claims court, and I'll be working with an attorney firm to help guide me going through that process. So I just wanted to clarify that, because I know there's been some question about that. There's been a couple numbers thrown out. It's the $5,000 $500 amount. That'd be the small claims reimbursement. That is currently sitting, as we're closing out the books for 17-18, that is currently sitting in a accounts receivable. So that was, in order to balance the budget, when you close out your books, you have to, everything in-outs have to balance. So there's an accounts receivable that will be, what we'll actually be trying to collect.
Commissioner Huxley?
Would you repeat that number, please? The
Final number is
balance.
$5,513.
Thank you.
And I'll be detailing that further as I take the next step in that. But I just wanted to kind of clarify where that. Going back to the original issue here, we're basically going to be looking for a motion to adopt ordinance for the travel policy.
So do we have a, oh,
Well, we can do
Council
discussion,
Huddle?
or I think it's still under staff report. So if you look at item 13 in your packet and you start scrolling through it, you'll see that on page, it follows our ordinance format. Article 1, General Administration, is the new Division 19. And essentially, I took as much as I could our travel policy and formatted it into ordinance format, definition, scope, etc. And I followed the numbering sequence, but then on page 7 of the packet, I made some typographical errors. We went from section 119050 to 119060, which is blank, to 119050 again. And so at your places, I've corrected the numbering sequence, the typographical errors there. And then at the very last page of the materials that I put at your places, it talks about enforcement, and it adds the provision that every day that there's a violation of this ordinance constitutes a new or separate violation. And that's a standard provision of a lot of violations. And what it does is it just basically, says that if you keep doing it every day, you're violating, it's a new violation. So that's really the sense of it there, and those are the only other comments I had. I think the board should be mostly familiar with the provisions because it is essentially a mirror of the travel policy. I added a little bit more about the county administrator being the administrator and enforcer, but really it's tied to the budget amount. The one change from the travel policy, your travel policy set the amount in the policy at $1,500, and what I've done here is say budgeted, because that allows any board to establish an amount through the budget. And that's really what the concern was. We used $1,500 the last time because that was the budget amount. So that's all I really had, unless there's any questions of the board. And there may be people who want to talk about this.
let me just make one comment. We keep hearing over and over again we have to have some sort of an emergency clause. There already is a generic clause in there that takes care of emergencies. Is that correct, Council Huddle?
Well, the ordinance here adopts by emergency clause. It's proposed to be an emergency clause, and when I prepared this ordinance, the information I had, how this came about is we had a policy, there was a ongoing efforts to enforce, and we received feedback from the court, questioning those efforts. And so we were in the middle of something, and then also my understanding was there was continuing conduct that allegedly could, create issues under the policy and ordinance as we're proposing. So therefore, in those circumstances, there was urgency to keep going, and that's where the board is allowed in those circumstances to adopt this under the emergency provision. So that's what's included here. The board doesn't have to. The board can ask for another reading or however it wants to do, but that's how
not
this
quite
was
what I was
prepared.
talking about.
I'm not sure what you're talking about then.
Okay, well, I'm going to make it more clear. There's been comments that there's not enough money there. We need some extra money for emergencies. And my point is there is a generic clause in this ordinance, proposed ordinance, that would allow for that. Did I make myself clear?
So are we going to change and?
No, I'm talking to Council Huddle right now.
Madam Chair, I would think, it's my understanding, is that if the county declares a state of emergency, meaning, we have not declared a state of emergency for this fire.
Right.
But if you do, basically that allows the county to supersede ordinances and rules. So let's say in a county emergency, you would basically supersede land use. You need to, in order to cut down trees or a view over a river, or you need to.
I guess I'm still not making myself clear.
No. So in a fire emergency,
I do too
in
now.
a fire emergency, you could basically suspend ordinances in a county emergency.
Okay, but what I'm talking about is if a commissioner wants to overspend the budget, they have the right, under this generic clause, to come back to the commission with a proposed increase of the budget.
Here's where that's found in this ordinance. If you're looking for, is there language in this ordinance that has that provision?
Exactly.
And so that's in section 1.19.100, and it says responsibility for travel beyond budget.
Exactly.
And it says any claim paid for travel expenses outside the respective commissioner or elected official budget travel expense accounts not pre-approved by a majority vote of the Board of Commissioners shall be the person. So what that says is there can be pre-approval outside of the budget. So
Exactly.
it would require pre-approval. And Mr. Schroeder identified another component of an emergency declaration where it does suspend some rules, and the board would be able to, in that emergency declaration, suspend rules, including the travel ordinance. So
Right.
those are two different ways to get to the same result, but both of those contemplate board pre-approval or board approval of an emergency provision or a request for an emergency expense outside of that budgeted. So-
Okay, I just wanted to make it clear that there were outside options. That's all I wanted to make clear.
Which requires board approval.
Right. Okay, so
Sorry for interrupting.
that's okay. I could just see we were on two different tracks, so. Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you. So it was either October or November. Things were a little intense and busy at that time. So did I not say that I'm going to need help on this budget?
And actually, we did give you some help, as you recall, $3,000 extra.
Well, that's kind of a first come, first served basis. That wasn't necessarily specific to individual commissioners in my view. So we have here a map still up on the screen there where we know what the risks are here. We know that I've communicated. I'm going to talk to the public here. We'll just give one example quickly here. The Association of ONC Counties, where I serve on the board, and we had a rather large PILT payment in lieu of taxes for $1.7 million. That's $1 million more than we got last year. The question is this, and I've asked before, what travel would you want me to stop doing? And I've never got an answer to that.
Yes, you did get an answer from me. I said you need to prioritize what you're doing.
Okay, I have. I absolutely have, ma'am. And so that you're not being specific on what you would, looking back, what you would have suggested as cheap and as economical as I travel. You have not said what I should have prioritized on the low end of things. So that's not helpful.
That's really not up to me to do the prioritization. That's up to you.
No, it's up to us as serving the public to make that clear. And I could have used your support. You don't travel, and neither does Commissioner Huxley.
Actually, I have traveled.
Oh, I know.
It's just that
Okay.
I don't charge it to the county.
Okay, so how many times you been out of Curry County?
I'm not going to go into that,
Okay.
but
I
will
wish you
tell
would,
that
because it would help the public understand what we're up against here. So I'm looking at 11 pages here, required by Council Huddle. I've looked at both these gentlemen are in the high 80s, mid 80s on their annual salary, which I don't have a quarrel with. But when you look at the amount of time that they are spending to take me to small claims court after no opportunity or offer to put on the table that we could sit and simply work this out. So we've spent all this time, their time, and we're going to continue to spend time, plus additional attorney fees, and you're going to move the goalpost here so we can have an ordinance so you can properly punish me. I just want the public to know that's what goes on in this building. And it is detrimental to the interests of Curry County. I will put, and I look forward to going before a judge, I'll put my activity up to the penny on what I did in terms of priority and my responsibility, and as cheap as I could possibly do it. And one more thing, I'm the only elected official that is not allowed to travel within the county. You two come to and from Brookings for the commissioners' meetings, which I appreciate. But the notion that Administrator Schroeder, Administrator Huddle, all department directors are reimbursed. I'm the only one. So I'm going to be able to make the point, I believe, to the judge that this is a political deal to punish me. So I'm going to vote for this ordinance so that I can go ahead and go to get an opportunity to go before a judge and explain it all. And I'll take my chances there. But I want the public to know that I believe this is purely political, and it's really unfortunate, and it is counterproductive to anything we're trying to accomplish here for the good of the county and the issues that we're dealing with.
Commissioner Huxley?
This comment is not to drag this on, but the tone here is that Commissioner Gold and Huxley have created this issue and all these costs. There is, and it's on the record, I can't cite which meeting, but it's on the record, on video, many months ago, where Commissioner Boyce was amenable to paying the difference, and we go forward from there. So it is not these two members, or I'll speak for myself, that have dragged this out. Okay, to the contrary. Thank you.
Well, and I'm looking at many other counties that have travel policies, some more stringent than ours, $500 allowance. And quite frankly, I think we need to have some limits because we need to be fiscally responsible. So, Commissioner Boyce, I heard that you are going to be supporting this ordinance. Do you want to make a motion?
No, I won't make the motion, but I'm not done discussing that we need some controls. You need some controls on Court Boyce, and that is beyond comprehension. And then to justify the amount of time the staff has spent on this to collect, what now, $5,000? You should have come to the table when you had a chance and we could have resolved this. So, sad day for Curry County. So no, I won't make the motion, but I will support it.
Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the travel policy or travel ordinance?
Chair, I would motion to approve the amended
Okay.
Travel ordinance that was handed out and presented an overview by County Council.
Do we have a second? I'll second that.
And I thought, I didn't see the speaker slips, but was there a speaker slip on this?
No,
or?
there
Okay.
was not. Call for the question?
Aye.
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 Okay, next we have public records policy. What was that? Oh, it's new. Aye.
Can we take care of that real quick? I don't know how long it's taken, but I'd like to speak on that as well.
I'm willing to go an extra 5 minutes.
Evans,
I don't know.
yes. I didn't know you were here to speak, Sheriff, or I would have spoke up.
Okay, public records policy revision. Sheriff Ward, I think you wanted to speak to it, or?
Just real quick, it's not being presented by me, but Sheriff Ward from the Sheriff's Office. Here a while back, the County Board of Commissioners kind of wanted to do a public information policy that centralized all the public information requests. I talked to John Huddle about this, and at that time I said, I don't think you want what you're asking for because it's going to be extensive, a lot of work done on that. Our system worked well the way we had it, but we cooperated with the Board of Commissioners by getting this under the one where it's at now. And so we also changed all the letterheads we changed we did notifications to all the people who normally give public information requests, all the insurance companies and all that, saying this is now how the policy reads. This is where you go to get it. And all along, I was saying, you be careful what you ask for, because it's going to be a lot of work. It's been changed, and the next thing I know, this last week, and no offense to Mr. Huddle, but I got noticed through an agenda routing slip that he wants to change it back. I'm not so certain we want it back, because the way we got it working worked. And I think it needs to be under one place in the county instead of, spread out. I know it's cost a lot of work on the county council, and I appreciate him wanting to do this, but there was really no discussion with my office taking it back after we'd already changed everything and notified everybody of how a public information request was going to be handled. So that was just my 2 cents. You guys can do what you want to do. We'll do whatever it takes, but that's just my 2 cents.
Okay, we appreciate your 2 cents. Council Huddle?
Thanks, Madam Chair. And again, no disrespect to the sheriff. The sheriff's correct. When the board made the change, I went and met with the sheriff and Captain McDonald, and they just said, this is going to be a lot of work, and you don't really know what you're getting into. And I think I said something along the lines of, well, this is what the board wants, and we'd like to try it. And so what happened was, I heard from my support staff. She had noted that since August 17th, we'd received 37 public record requests, 33 of which were related to sheriff's office. So in a very short time, and then the process that we adopted, and some of the change that the board wanted was in relation to the changes in state law that came about last year that talked about some of the requirements of response within 5, or an acknowledgement within 5 days, a production within 10 days, a payment, with some flexibility to change those. So with the changes in state law and the change in the county policy, between Brenda and myself, we've had to write basically 33 acknowledgement letters to different people, those kind of things. So she came to me and said this was not something that she can handle. And so it was based on her urgency, because I was coming up on a deadline for board agenda action, that I prepared an agenda item commentary. I didn't have time to talk to the sheriff, but I did, when I sent it to the BOC office, I sent it to the sheriff so he would get it before he received the published agenda. And he said, what if we don't want it back? I think technically, legally, as the sheriff kind of conceded, I think the board the local government establishes who the public record custodian is, and then the state statutes contemplate a different path for denials from an elected official versus an administrator. Administrators go to the district attorney, elected official, questions go to the circuit court. I also checked, what we learned, and it's in the memorandum, we learned that the sheriff's office did have a really good way to handle their public records requests, and they were doing a good job. And as I mentioned in the memorandum, recommending this change back, where we bifurcate, split the requirements for public record custodian to sheriff doing sheriff requests and county council still doing the rest of the county, which again, in our records, there had been 4 since this started versus 33. So that's the split we're recommending. We do say that the reason for going to a single public record custodian was a result of inconsistencies in the past application of the old policy, but none of those inconsistencies were identified out of the sheriff's office. So the reason for the change was not resulting from how the sheriff's office was doing business, was from how other departments were doing it. So this kind of recognizes that, unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever word you want to use, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'd like to think that if we go back to this quickly versus, taking more time to do the change. I think it would be more effective to do the change quickly. I also looked at some job descriptions for the sheriff's personnel who had been doing that. It did indicate that their jobs were to answer inquiries from the public and to do records work. None of that was in Brenda's job description, even though you have the general other duties as assigned. And then also, there's nothing in the county council budget to recognize revenues from public records, but the sheriff's budget, this last budget, page 61, had $4,000 of revenues recognized for printing and duplicating in the civil division, and then in their dispatch division they had $1,500 for criminal reports and LEDs revenue recognition. I don't exactly know what those are, but I think you know, printing things and revenue, I'm surmising. And then also, by the way, what happens is on the back end, so on the front end we have to send out a letter to everybody in 5 days of getting these requests. So that in the last, you know, few weeks has been 30-something letters, which again, you think they're simple, but each record request requires a little bit of time. But then on the back end is once there's a cash handling function. So we're receiving payments and we have to do these things called turnover sheets, and we have to fill out these forms. And so we were doing that, but we did say that the sheriff would still, the revenues go to general fund, and that we weren't claiming the revenues for legal on that. So again, my recommendation, I'm kind of crying uncle, I suppose, on this thing, and that also just recognizing the hard work and the good work that the sheriff's office is doing. I just think for the good of the county and the way things are structured, that if the sheriff could send out another notice to the parties who he put out and said we're going back to normal, that would be the best for all. Oh, by the way, we have not been hitting the mark on our acknowledgments to people. There's still some requests I've had that haven't got the acknowledgement out in the statutory time. So I just think there's the system that the board created with my input and perhaps support but ignorance isn't working. And I think it was working before, and I'd recommend going back to it. And no disrespect to the sheriff, actually out of respect to the sheriff and the good work that his people are doing and the system they had in place. So
you're recommending going back to the system with the sheriff taking care of his, but all departments within the county other than the sheriff's department go through you.
Right.
Is that correct?
So it's an amendment to the public record policy where you created the single point of contact for all the public to have sheriff records be handled by the sheriff. And I think he would handle it in a similar way they done, which was good. So that's really the recommendation I have. It's before the board with that. You've heard the sheriff isn't, he's not in favor of it, I don't think, but again,
Well, it's not that I'm not in favor, but I can't keep going back and forth.
I don't intend to ever go back to what we had just come from for the last 3 or 4 weeks, Sheriff. I think it's not a good system. I think you guys were doing a great job.
Well, we tried to explain that.
I know.
And because it is unique in our office, we have requests that, you know, say for police reports, that he would not know if we can release that or not, because it may be under investigation or it hasn't been adjudicated or whatever, and we have to get that information from the DA before we can actually release the records. So, you know, over the years we developed it and it was working fine, but it is a lot of work.
So how long would it take you to revert back to the old system where you were actually walking on water, producing records?
Well, it's not so much the time. I mean, it's going to, I would say at least a couple of weeks for us to make all the notifications, and they're still going to have people sending report or requests to, you know, because of the change. I just don't want to get into a situation where we're not meeting that 5-day period where we're responding to these public information requests saying, yeah, we have your request, we'll look into it, this is what it's going to cost, or and if it's going back and forth, it may get lost in shuffle. So I don't want to get to that.
Well, I think people will be understanding because of the...
Well, there's people out there that will send you public information requests because they blanketed the sheriff's offices across the state, and they sue.
I got you.
If they don't, we don't meet those.
Add a few days to that requirement for getting back to people?
Not no, the 5-day actually
5
is.
days still the same?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what could we do to take care of that, to make sure that...
I think I like to think, notwithstanding this hiccup, that I have a good working relationship and my staff has a good working relationship with the sheriff's office, and I would just ask the board to make this change now, ask the sheriff to, as quick as he could, undo what he did, and until it goes back to how it was, that we'll just pledge to the sheriff that we'll work extra hard and not letting things fall through the cracks. So, but I would like the board.
Or something
I'm not saying that, but what I would say is that if the board just adopts the order as is, amending the public records policy, that legal counsel's office will work as closely as possible with the sheriff to make sure that we comply with the public records law.
Do you have something you want to add?
I don't know everything.
Go on up, Cap.
For those that have not met Captain McDonald with the Sheriff's Office, one of my concerns on it is and I don't know everything that was discussed because I walked in, I had another meeting, and I apologize for that, but we've already put out to vendors and to people that request and to the public, and we've got them trained that it goes there. And honestly, I want to make sure that we stick with the 5-day notification, and because I walked into this in the middle, not just this conversation, but in the middle of the records request change, I don't know how well the sheriff's office, and not that I think that we weren't, but I don't know for 100% how well the sheriff's office was actually meeting that 5-day requirement of notification. I have not, I know that Mr. Huddle has a form that they send out. I have not found anything like that in the sheriff's office records, where we have a form that we send people that were in receipt of your request and are processing it. So actually, when it went to Mr. Huddle, I was actually very happy to see that. I know he doesn't like what I'm saying right now because it is a lot of work.
I agree. You were happy. I was ignorant. So.
And when he came to my office and we discussed it, we told him, look, we get a lot of these, and the direction of the board was for him to take it. So we went in and we changed our website. We changed all the forms on our website to indicate, the office of the records management for the county, and all that's been changed, and it's been flowing. Yes, we had some hiccups, but it is, and I think Mr. Huddle has found out that we weren't kidding when we said we get a lot of requests.
So would it help if we gave you that form to send out to people?
Well, if we get it back, if you guys choose to give it back to us and not leave it where you put it, that's your choice as the Board of Commissioners. It's your order. Mr. Huddle doesn't want it. I kind of like the fact, honestly, from our perspective, I like the fact that he took it, or you guys gave it to him. It took that off of us. But if it's given back, then I will work with Mr. Huddle to ensure that, that we do everything that we can, that we're in compliance with the regulations. But like I said, it has freed up some of our staff time to do other things and other responsibilities. We still have a component of it that we provide the record to Mr. Huddle, but it's your decision, and we will go by whatever the board says on this. But
Commissioner Boyd?
I just want to add a comment here. A minute ago, Commissioner Gold, you questioned my priorities. We have just created, no, I haven't, through policies and procedures and pushing up paperwork and mixed up priorities. Look at the mess we've created. It's very frustrating for me to have my priorities questioned when I periodically try and bring you back information when I travel outside the county, and you have no idea what I'm doing. I wish you were interested. But this is, how do we get out of this, and the expense, the money wasted for the time that these two and Brenda Starbird and John Jesuit have to spend, it just goes on and on and on. No wonder nobody wants to come to work for Curry County. No wonder we've lost 93 people in the last 3.5 years. We have got to get our priorities in order.
Commissioner Huxley?
I don't see what else Council John Huddle could have done, or how he could have said, I screwed up any different. I'm honestly.
I think I said we. I think I said we.
And
I included the
that
We don't have. I don't have any heartburn against.
It's like hey, you know, this is, it was a mistake, please, you know, work with me, and I think that's
Well,
been
here's
the
the deal.
response back. So just, I
We
think
don't have
the
any
sooner-
problems against the
Yeah.
county council at all. We
Yeah.
work with him just fine.
So,
I have no
the
heartburn,
sooner
except
the better. I
he's
think.
only doing what the
Yeah.
Board of Commissioners told him to do. So,
Well, it was a recommendation, and I, you know, yeah.
So
So,
basically what we're
first
saying, sir, is that if you give it back to us,
Yeah.
we'll take it because you're giving it back to us. Our preference is we don't want it back. Honestly, that's our preference. But we will do whatever the county policy is, we will comply with it and we'll follow it and we'll work with Mr. Huddle either way.
And that's
So
And I
all
think
that we
need
could
to
expect,
work on what's
and-
most efficient.
you guys made the decision
Yeah.
to take it away.
So-
It's up to you to make the decision to give it back. We're just telling you what our opinion is on it.
Okay, so.
I would make a motion to accept, with the discussion and the explanations we've had, to accept the proposed change in the public records policy from Council Huddle as proposed.
Do we have a
effective
second?
when?
He didn't raise his hand.
Actually, he did.
Effective
Call
when?
him? I'm sorry.
Effective
Yeah.
when?
If I
I would
could, so
defer that
Sheriff,
to-
the answer is that the order is adopted today and there's no delay in the effectiveness of an order. And, you know, there will be some transition time and certainly we'll work with you during the transition time. But I think however quickly you could implement the changes to your website and the re-notification of people. And what I have said is, I think the ordinance says that county council would handle any records requests received through the adoption of the order, which is, you know, we'd still be handling everything we've got in our pipeline up to now. Going forward with your request, it would be back to normal today. So unless, you know, the board wants to change that, if you have a recommendation, Sheriff, but I've got to tell you, I don't know that we can handle another week or two of doing this. So, and by the way, I'll be gone for the next, I'll be gone this Friday and the upcoming Monday, and we're just an office of two folks, so.
So the public information that comes through you as of today, you'll just ship them back over to us? to
Only the
make
sheriff's request. And again, Sheriff, I know that seems like a lot, but technically, if they come through us, they go back to you anyway because we have to ask you for the records.
I just
so-
want to make sure I
All
don't
right.
miss that 5-day window.
I understand that for sure.
If they get it to you and it says 3 or 4 days before they
I
get
know
to
what
me.
you
and-
mean. Yep. And so far, again, I've missed the 5-day window on a handful of the 30, 40 requests, and we're getting some phone calls, we're getting some follow-up emails. So, again, and I'll say this: that your staff has been excellent, including your command staff, but also your dispatch folks have just been great to work with, and even your civil. But again, you know, I've mentioned folks and other folks, and it's just Brenda and me. So again, I'm real sorry about it. Apologize for the inconvenience.
Okay,
personally.
I'm looking for a second, and then we'll get into discussion. So is there a second to the motion to approve the ordinance?
Yeah. Is it, you know,
It's just an order, changing the
The
policy.
order?
Yeah.
Okay, so I second that. Any further discussion? Commissioner Boyd?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sheriff Ward, Captain McDonald, thanks for kind of bailing us out on this. And I didn't hear anything you said that led me to believe you were in any way unhappy with Council Huddle. Our legacy should be to try and find you and help you get deputies and keep deputies. And so I'm just going to keep beating that drum. And I'm sorry that this stuff got dumped in his lap, and that's just a sign of the times and what we're dealing with on this board. And again, the mixed up priorities in my view, and I think the public needs to know that. So the time we just spent on this is really discouraging to me. Thank you.
So we have a motion on the floor, a second. Any further discussion? Call for the question?
Aye.
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 Thank you, guys.
Sure.
I apologize
Sure.
for the...
I have a question, I think, for Jermaine, for the board here. We're scheduled to go in executive session at 1 for union negotiations. Question is, because Bruce is going to call in, and I know you guys were scheduled to come in, If we change that, would that be a problem for you if we went through the rest of our agenda and then, or do you want to just go into the executive session at one? Whatever is convenient for you.
We have meetings this afternoon, and I got to get up to Agnes for fire briefing out there,
So do you want to keep it at 1?
if we could.
Yep.
Okay,
We'll
well,
just do
this
that then.
meeting is going to be recessed until...
Exec session at
1?
One.
Madam Chair,
And then we'll go back into the regular meeting after that. Yes.
then we will finish our meeting. Are we fairly close to being done?
No, we're not
After
that
the
close.
executive session?
No, we're not that close to being done.
I have a very important fire meeting at 2:30 that I cannot change. So I'll do my best.
Okay, well, we'll do our best. This meeting will be reconvened back at 1 o'clock. John Jesuit, is that going to be a problem if you don't get your hour lunch? Oh, that's true. All the ramifications, and so you just adjust. Oh, yes, we are. We're coming back into session, and we'll be going into executive session according to ORS 192.660-2-D to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to carry on labor negotiations. So we're now going into executive session. Everybody that shouldn't be here, we'll see you later. Started, so.
Well, I don't see any either.
Okay, we're going to be starting up and continuing with our regular agenda. Next item on the agenda is the public records policy revision. Council Huddle?
I think you actually mean the public meeting decorum revision.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's
Don't
okay.
mind me.
Item 15.
Is that correct? Are we on
That
the
is
decorum?
correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Going to the decorum.
Well, you had the public part right, and then you had the council huddle part
Okay,
right. So
2 out of 3 isn't bad.
yeah, and so this is really a very similar to the last item, but essentially our public, we had both a ordinance on public meeting decorum and a rule on public meeting decorum. The rule was the most recent adoption, and that allowed for us to issue citation to someone into court if they were actually disruptive at one of our meetings. And based on the court's feedback on the travel policy enforcement, we took it upon ourselves we've never had to issue a citation to anyone on the decorum ordinance. This was already an ordinance, so all we did was amend this ordinance. This is ordinance maintenance of order and decorum of Board of Commissioner meetings. This is Article 1, Division 7. The amendments we're changing in definitions. It said unreasonable, loud, or disruptive language. We changed that language word to conduct. We emphasized that the conduct must result in actual disruption. And then the big thing on the ordinance was cause for removal of a person from a board meeting. And what we're saying now is cause to impose sanction on a person at a board meeting. And then we give a later on, and then we say what the causes are, and the reasonably louder disruptive language, louder disruptive noise, violent distracting action, refusal to obey rules of conduct that we have, and then refusal to obey a lawful order of the presiding officer, which the presiding officer is allowed to do, or an order which has been approved by the majority of the board. And we do say that the conduct, again, must result in actual disruption. That's out of the case law. And then the sanctions, it used to be removing people, but we say the board may order that the record reflect the offending party is in violation of the ordinance, call a recess, order that the hearing room be cleared of the offending party or parties, order that they be issued a citation per Article 10, Division 1, or adjourn the meeting, and the above list is not exclusive. And really that was primarily it. We can use law enforcement. So we just consolidated. We did not eliminate our rules of decorum, because the rules of decorum talk about other kind of non-enforceable things. We're going to be polite and courteous and those kind of things, not engage in personal attacks. But this is mainly for removal of, we have to have actual disruption to cite someone. So really that's all I had, Madam Chair. This was, again, in reaction. This is also has an emergency clause, and that's, you know, really the long and the short of it. So,
Commissioner Huxley?
County Council, you mentioned this does not remove or eliminate the current order.
The rule,
of the
yes.
rules of decorum. But my question, one question is, in the travel policy ordinance, did that remove the travel policy as a document? I took it that it didn't. It was a, but you did show there was an issue with the amount. You know,
I'll be honest
for
with you,
your
Mr. Chair.
language,
The travel policy ordinance was meant to actually take the place of the ordinance was meant to take the place of the policy. It was more or less a taking of that policy and just reformatting it into ordinance shape.
Okay.
This is not doing that with the decorum policy. So it's a good question for purposes of discussion and getting clear understanding of those two items. Because the rules that the board has made are, you know, really just how you're going to comport yourself during the meetings, and, you know, it had to do with time limits. We're not going to issue somebody a citation for exceeding the time limit, but if that exceeding the time limit results in disruption, actual disruption of the meeting, you know, if they just refuse to stand down or refuse to go back to their chair and just stay there and disrupt the meeting. So it has nothing really to do with the time limit, just a disruptive factor. So that's why we're just leaving those rules in place. But yeah, go ahead.
Commissioner Huxley?
Okay, then my question on the decorum, when we talk about fines under the protocol for speaking, the current order, not the ordinance, the current order.
Yes.
Under Exhibit B, it's the one place, and this was an existing document long before the order was made. This
This
was
ordinance
one that had existed for
been
part
on
of it
maybe
for
I'll
years.
call it 96 or
Well, at
prior.
the bottom, it says the presiding officer or board will determine violations of these rules subject to a $250 fine, and then it references specifically Ordinance 0104.
Right.
So that was back to 2001.
Right.
So does that specific amount of fine
We probably, I will
complicate
tell you
things?
this, we probably want to amend the rules of decorum in light of adopting this. And this probably could have used a companion piece, and maybe now that we think about it,
And we're
the
not
other one
ready. Excuse me.
could have used a companion piece. That's okay. Did you have something?
No, I just think you're making a very good point. I apologize for...
So would you suggest we table this to the next meeting and get it all set up, or what
I
would you
think
suggest?
I think you can adopt this and then we can bring the order back. All I'm saying is we have some unfinished business. We don't have to do them simultaneously, but until we change that order, people could argue, because actually the base fine is more than $250.
So that's what I
And
thought,
so,
for sure.
yeah.
That's the reason I raised that.
So, right.
Well, actually, there's a minimum fine of about $250.
Yeah.
There's a presumptive fine
Yep.
of $440,
Yeah.
which is,
Yeah.
and I think our ordinance, Article 10 enforcement, says we will use presumptive fines.
Yes, so there is some unfinished business even if the board adopts this today.
Okay.
The board could also continue this to the next meeting, but I think, you know, this should be kind of familiar territory for the board. So if there's any other questions, I see another hand up. Yep.
Commissioner
Well,
Huxley?
no, with that
Okay.
You want to make a motion?
clarification, I would motion that we
Whoa.
accept the...
Whoa.
That's fine, we can have more discussion.
Yeah.
Just relax.
It's true. You can have discussion after a motion.
Okay, so Commissioner Huxley?
Okay, thank you.
I am relaxed, ma'am. That's why I waited my turn.
Good.
And then he said some motion so that
That's fine.
You-
I didn't
you obliged
complete,
him.
So let me try and request to speak once more and to be recognized.
Yes.
Okay, then I would motion that we approve the ordinance amending the order of decorum Board of Commissioner meetings as proposed by County Council.
Do we have a second? I'll second that. Now we're going to have discussion. Commissioner Boyce, I think you were chomping at the bit there.
No, I was waiting patiently, and all of a sudden we got a motion on the table,
Well,
Madam Chair.
no, it doesn't matter
So,
if there's
listen,
a motion. You have
okay,
discussion.
that's a perfect, what just happened there is a perfect example how any two commissioners can silence a third commissioner. And it's happened in the past. And it's not good business.
Okay, I'm gonna stop you on that because
You're not going to stop me
no,
because
wait
that's
just a minute.
exactly what we're talking
Wait
about
just a
here.
minute.
And I'm going to finish if you would if you would
Okay,
agree
well,
to let me
explain
finish my
something
point.
here. We had a motion, there's a second, and now we're having discussion. You have every right to discuss.
So why'd you
Now
interrupt me?
it's
I was trying to do
because
that,
you're
ma'am.
arguing about the motion coming up. I'm trying to explain to
Your
you.
disrespect is off the chart. It is just
No,
so
I don't think that was
apropos.
being disrespectful.
I
So
watched the...
go ahead with your discussion, please.
You've interrupted me about 5 times now, which is also the point. I watched the, with great interest, not as much as I would have liked, but the Brett Kavanaugh Supreme Court Justice hearings. And of course, the Judicial Committee is controlled by the Republicans. But for an hour and 15 minutes, they had people in the back yelling. You could about half the time make out what the people were saying, but they never removed anybody. And I really respected the Republicans for doing that. I don't know if legally they could. I assume they could. They were looking at, some of the people wanted to contact the Capitol Police. And yes, after an hour and 15 minutes, go ahead, Mr. Huxley. You're not interested in what I have to say, obviously.
He has his hand raised, waiting to be recognized. Continue.
Anyway, to the credit of the actually not just the Republicans, but some of the Democrats, they withstood the bombardment of the back. The point is, people need to be encouraged to come here and talk, even when it's uncomfortable for us. And when you talk about a $400 penalty or citation, and then you want to change this order so that you can properly have the option of serious penalty, it just goes to where we've been for almost 2 years now. And so, no, I don't think we should vote on this at all until it is completely outlined on what we're voting on. And we obviously have someone else that wants to comment on this from the public, and so I don't know why we would be in a big hurry on this, and why we would, more council time, more administrator time, expensive time at that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Huxley?
I didn't clearly watch anything yesterday other than just captions on the first day of these hearings, and what I understood was they arrested about 30 people is what I
think we're kind of off the subject.
Just for the record, I just want to say I'm reading the Los Angeles Times. It says by the end of the first day, more than 70 protesters have been arrested for yelling and disrupting the proceeding, making it the most confrontational Supreme Court confirmation hearing in recent memory.
Thank you.
So, but you would, if you read further or previous articles, you will see that they did allow the people to protest. I don't know who pulled the trigger to have them arrested, and I give you that I only was able to watch a little bit, but they did allow the people to speak, and I think that's the important point here.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. We have a second. Is there any further discussion? Call for the question.
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Okay. Yes.
If I may just make a question, because it came up earlier in the meeting when I declined to start answering questions from people from the audience, and because of existing policy, and was said there is no existing policy. This would be on the back wall, but the comment card that everybody signs on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. On the sixth bullet point from the top, or the second from the bottom, the second up, it says the county is not obligated to respond to questions to commissioners or staff during the public comment period. Just a point of information.
Okay, our next item on the agenda is the Merv George letter. Yes.
If I could, I want to talk to you about procedures for adopting ordinances, and on this ordinance for the decorum policy, we had invoked the emergency clause. That's per state statute, and what it says is an ordinance necessary to meet an emergency may be adopted at a single meeting by unanimous vote of all its members present. So because Commissioner Boyce did not vote, I believe it's best to bring it back for a second reading.
That's fine.
Okay.
Okay, so Merv George just lost his father to a stroke, and I thought it was a good idea for the Board of Commissioners to send a letter. So let me tell you what I wrote in this letter.
And Merv George?
He's
He's
the
the
fire
River
guy.
Siskiyou
fire for the U.S.
Wow.
Rogue River,
fellow.
Siskiyou National Forest, new supervisor. He's been there 3.5 months.
Been working
He
real
is
hard on
responsible. I'm sorry?
Go
His
ahead.
father died, not Merv George. Merv
Oh,
George
thank you.
Sr.
No wonder. Yes, they're both named Merv. Excellent point, yeah.
Okay, so it
Very
says...
close to-
Commissioner Boyce was still speaking.
Oh, okay, excuse me.
Yeah, so as the supervisor of the 5-county area in this fast forest that we're losing thousands of acres a day, yes, he is responsible, and he has made an incredible effort to do his best to get this fire out. And I gain more respect for him every day, and I thank you for this thought that you had and the effort you made to write the letter. I don't even need to read it. I'm sure it's very appropriate.
Well,
and,
it's 2 paragraphs. I can read it in half a minute here.
And he's given us some hope on our national forest, and may in fact be leading well a good portion, maybe all of Oregon. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, let me just quickly read this letter. Dear Merv, the Curry County Board of Commissioners would like to express their sincere sympathy for the loss of your father. We are sure that this is a very difficult time for you, especially with the added stress of all the wildfires. We would also like to thank you for your very thorough updates on the fires. It is very comforting to know that you are trying to do the best for all of the counties that are involved in this devastation. Sincerely yours.
So he's doing his father proud.
We don't expect him back maybe for 2 weeks, by the way, which is also putting pressure on the team management, but he also is very well represented by other folks within the long-term representatives within the Forest Service that I think I have to say, are really picking up the slack rather well, and he has put people in to represent him that are, I'm watching close and much appreciative of the effort they're making, and I see some chances, some great opportunities to change federal forest and national land management policies.
Okay, so bottom line, I'll be putting this on the county stationery, and I need a motion to approve this letter. So do I have a motion?
Chair,
So moved, Madam Chair.
I would second the motion.
Any further discussion?
Do you have a hand raised?
Call for the question?
Oh, no.
Aye.
Aye. Did I get an aye from you?
Yeah, I said aye.
Okay,
Excuse me, I
good.
overlooked your copy.
Okay, moving on to old business. There is none. And announcements. The Ambulance Service Advisory Committee, Law Enforcement, there's a position still. Parks Advisory Committee is taking applications if necessary. Well, we already have the Mountain Drive person. Planning Commission from South County, from North County is September 12th, 2018. Workshop at 10 a.m. in the Commissioner's Hearing Room. Is September 12th. September 19th, there will be a general meeting at 10 a.m. in the Commissioner's Hearing Room. October 3rd, general meeting, 10 a.m., Commissioner's Hearing Room. So, moving on, Administrator Schroeder, do you have an update for us?
Okay. In addition to the vacancies, we'd like to add that the Revenue Generation Committee, the Citizens Task Force on Revenue, I can't remember what the name was, but we'll be taking applications for that. And September 25th, deadline to get your application in. County Board will appoint people to the committee on October 3rd. So I have a couple things. One of which is taking of minutes. So in the budget process this spring, before I got here, you allocated approximately 200 hours for one of our irregular employees, Jamie, to go back and start doing minutes. So occasionally you've seen minutes from 17 and 16 or whatever there is. She basically has almost extinguished that 200 hours so far. I've asked JJ, he was gone yesterday, to put together where we're at on 2017 and 2018. So the 2017 minutes are being developed by both Jamie and JJ, and I see Brenda has helped on those occasionally also. We have, is that 10 of 35 is what you said on that, JJ? 10, you got 35 and 10, so you got 10 done out of 35? Huh?
You got 17 done out of...
That is from 2017.
Yes.
35.
Okay, yes, thank you. Sorry about that, Charles.
Speak up, please.
I'm sure his headphones went.
Jimmy Hendricks.
And then in the 2018, there's
Maybe
a
that's what it
42.
was.
10 of 42 it looks like, and Jamie's just finishing up on the budget committee ones. So, and there JJ did not have time to go back to 16 and 15 to figure out where we're at on that. It's my understanding that there are still minutes not done from 2015 and 2016. One of the things, before we go any further and really investigate this, I want to know if the board is inclined to continue the process of basically reporting and doing minutes for past meetings. We would come back to you, obviously, with a further report and a budget recommendation to try to, catch up with that over, until next spring. The budget, the minutes, if these are minutes from boards where there are no members present that were on those boards, or there wasn't a quorum of members, we would just accept the minutes in draft form. Draft minutes are a public record and will be available for the public to look back long after we're gone. So there would be still a benefit to recording minutes and getting them accepted by the board.
Not accepted, but they couldn't be voted on, just...
Accepted.
Okay.
I just said accepted.
I'm just
No,
not
you
sure
don't
what
like the
that
word
means.
accepted.
I don't know what it means.
Receiving. They'd be received by the board.
You could put
could
them
be
in a
approved.
packet.
Can't be approved.
Yeah, okay. All right. They could be acknowledged. How about acknowledged?
Acknowledged is probably a better word.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyway.
Commissioner Huxley?
The referenced here to the irregular employee, and then you referenced to the 200 hours. I did not see this irregular employee on the by name or title on the master payroll number 1, number 2. A couple of 3 years ago, I was the one who basically was placed or suggested that we place $5,000 in the Board of Commissioner office fund under, I think, either outsource or regular employees or whatever, but $5,000. So when I do the math, I come up with $25 an hour if we're talking 200 hours, because it was indeed $5,000. So I'm trying to think what's going on.
How about we have Ms. Kallstrom address this?
Okay, Louise?
Louise Kallstrom, County Accountant. Number one, the budgeted hours for an irregular employee irregular employee doesn't specify who that is. It's just irregular. And irregular employees are not on the master payroll.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Sometimes the master payroll does not include all irregular employees, because at the time master payroll was done, I'm not sure. Are all
I
irregulars on there?
I have the master payroll.
Are all the irregulars on there?
For years.
Okay. I don't know why that Jamie wasn't on there, because she was an irregular employee at the time. She was budgeted for 300 hours for the whole year in the budget.
For the $5,000?
For, well, there's
That makes more sense
it's
than
10
200.
something an hour, 10.50 an hour for 300 hours. I don't know what the total
Well,
of
yeah,
that is.
that makes
but
much-
there's also another 300 hours budgeted for basically for a substitute for if the administrative assistant goes on vacation or is out sick or something, and we need to hire somebody to replace him. So there's some money there for support staff to cover the position that John Jesuit has, plus the 300 hours for Jamie. That's what's in the budget.
I apologize. I was under the impression she's at 175 out of 200 hours.
She's it's 300 hours, I believe.
Okay.
I'd say at
Somebody told me
least-
200 last
At
week.
least, because it was $5,000.
But she was not only getting close to, I mean, the number of hours she's working, she will be out in a very short time,
Yes.
over the 300. And the second concern is also that she is coming very close to being a PERS employee because of the amount of hours she's worked over the 6 months.
Okay.
And so
Right.
we had those two looking at where is this position going, and should we make it more permanent? Yeah. Was it 300 or 200 hours? Julie's better at that.
Hi, Julie Swift, payroll and HR. The person that was hired to do the minutes was anticipated to be a very temporary basis, and she was supposed to be done by June 30th, so the irregular amount that's in the budget is not specific to that position. I think that is for extra hours needed in the Board of Commissioners office if necessary. So that's why the person's name is not on the master payroll, because it's intended only to be through June 30th.
We looked at, because we had subbed, it was specific in the prior year that fed into this one for transcribing, because we did that.
Right, but it was anticipated she would not be on the payroll past July 1st, which is why she's not listed on the master payroll.
And we're not paying her $25 an hour.
And I think we're paying her 15.
Well,
so
the math just did not make sense.
Yeah, so I guess before we come back with a more updated, more detailed report of where we're at, because I just was informed of this last week, I want to make sure that the board has an intent that they want us to keep going with this, and here's a solution. If the board has no intent of going backwards and recreating all these minutes, we're not going to create a report. But it'd be my recommendation that we do.
Commissioner Huxley?
Commissioner
Okay,
Boyce,
you
it was a
first.
tie with our
Nope.
hands going up.
It's okay.
So the tie goes
Both of
to
you will get in. Let's relax.
Will we flip a coin?
Forget it. Just go ahead.
You mentioned, what was the last thing you said there, that you recommend that?
Yeah, I would recommend, I think it's good government practice to have minutes, even if they're not approved by the board, because I think, going back to what we talked about earlier, making an order, if all you have from 2015 is sporadic minutes with videos, well, eventually the video maybe isn't going to be there, the website changes, technology changes, but, a piece of paper somebody's going to look at 25 years from now and say, well, they did meet and they did decide on something. I'm just talking like 1 to 2 pages per meeting, just to say what was voted on and what was decided.
Question, and then this is it. Do we have the videos properly and safely recorded and archived indefinitely? And if so, why? I can't imagine why that wouldn't be.
It's not Oregon law. Oregon law says written minutes, period. No other minutes apply. It's Oregon law.
I'm going to research that because I keep forgetting to do
Well, yeah, so future boards could decide not to have video from 10 years ago. They could just say, we don't have the money to deal with it.
But I think my question answered. They are not properly recorded or archived, the videos?
Videos are not under Oregon law.
That doesn't matter.
And
I'm wanting
I'm
to
just
know
saying
if
that
we have, here we go.
Let's get the expert in here.
But Oregon law says written minutes only. That's what Oregon law says. That's the only thing they recognize.
If you want an answer, I don't mean to interrupt.
Okay, good.
Well,
Thanks, Charles.
I can't speak to what's required in Oregon law. That's for your attorney's job to decide for you. And as far as I know, Luis is correct about that. You do need written records of what you're doing. But as far as your videos from 2017 forward, so that doesn't get you out of any hot water for 2015-16 because brand media wasn't around. But at least from 2017, January 1st forward, you do have videos. They are quadruplicate saved. They are scrubbed onto archive.org, which is a nonprofit website that's one of the most durable in the world. Every single video is saved, is backed up on a local hard drive that the county will control. If and when you want the hard drive, it's sitting there in the office. It's saved on archive.org, which is going to last forever as far as however long the internet lasts.
Perfect.
And that website is a nonprofit website that has literally backups in multiple countries. There's a backup in Alexandria, Egypt, and in Canada, and other places around the world. You will never lose your government videos that we're making for you.
I have a lot of
just wanna
friends
make
in
that clear.
Egypt, actually. No.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
So
Charles.
at this point in time, the law is we have written minutes. So there's not a whole lot we can do about that at this point unless we get someone to change the law. Commissioner Huxley, I believe you were next.
Okay.
I didn't even have to flip a coin.
It's a retention question. Okay, that's the key, is retention.
Minutes are forever.
Okay, it's a retention question. As they progress, and they've recently, at the state of Oregon, progressed on audio, special audio, not just any audio. If it's done this way and this way through the archive division now recognizes that type of audio recording as permanent, and it would suffice as a record. You would not need written minutes, but video has not progressed to that point. And this will come out in the new, with the retention and the Oregon administrative rules versus the Oregon revised statutes. This will come out in the new 2018 Attorney General's Public Records and Meetings Manual, because they were good enough to put some changes in that I suggested to the archive division and regards to retention, so that will be included. So a video is not, to say that a video is a video, what they have right now and what they'll still have is that you have to retain the video for 1 year after the approval, not the writing, but the approval of written minutes, because they're still of that position that they're not permanent records. After you have written minutes, which they now will define as permanent in the new manual, then you have to keep the video for 1 more year. It's a matter of retention and what is accepted as a permanent record and what is not. That's the key, not so much that this is the law that it has to be written. It's the retention schedules. And my point on this, and I'll add this, I've done it before, but I'll add this back into the record and ask that it be posted. This time it's a statute versus the Oregon Public Meeting and Records Manual documentation on the minimum requirements of written minutes. And we're not approving written minutes that meet these requirements. So I don't support anything anymore at this point in time. You're not going to do it right. Why spend more money to do it wrong? And that's exactly what we're doing. We're not doing it right. We're not following the law.
You're talking about the minutes must be a true reflection of the matters discussed and the views of the
I'm reading right
participants.
out the statute,
Sure,
and it's right from the
192,
Oregon
650.
AG's manual
Sure.
too. It's the same thing.
Yep.
Paraphrased differently, but it's exactly the same, and we're not doing that now. And why go and spend more money on doing older records that the audio is not good? There's many areas where you can't hear it anyway, going back to 2016, 15, the open ones that haven't been done go back to 2010 and 2011. There are records out there. When we got into, worked with county council on this 2 years ago, on possibly outsourcing, and that's where the $5,000 was originally budgeted in the Board of Commissioner office. That was the reason behind that being budgeted, was for transcription service. It was, if they would have been able to hear and understand, it would have been the most viable financial way to go. But they couldn't understand enough to where they said we can't do it.
And that was on the old stuff, right?
Correct. So I'm against going further to not do it right.
Thank you. And again, I think Commissioner Huxley's saying that the minutes aren't a true reflection of the matters discussed in the meeting, among other reasons, and the views of the participants, among other reasons why he doesn't want to approve the minutes or go forward in spinning them. I think that, you know, whether the minutes satisfy the law is in the first purview up to a vote of the majority of the Board of Commissioners, very much like anything else the board does. It's a board decision. If someone wants to say they don't, they'd probably need a court order or something to mandamus them. And here's the other part. It says, if written minutes are prepared, they cannot be withheld from the public merely because they will not be approved until the next meeting. If minutes have not been approved, they may be so identified. So I think perhaps, Clark, the word of Mr. Schroeder would be, we will identify these minutes as being draft versus acknowledged or anything like that. So
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Earlier there was a comment that that because the board are different, they cannot approve minutes from when they were not there. Is that true?
The only way I can think of, what I've heard is if someone is not present at a meeting, the only way to approve minutes is to go back and view the tape of the meeting. So the board who is not that board, because
because I mean, year after year we had
I don't want to
budget
talk about what you
committees
used to do.
that were not always a full budget committee from the year before, and they always approved.
You're talking about somewhere else, right?
Well, I don't see what the difference is if you can or can't approve of minutes in a different entity.
Again, they just have to be voted on as a true reflection of what happened in the views of the participants. And my understanding is the best way for anyone to do that is to either have been at that meeting or to have reviewed the tape of the meeting to know whether it meets that criteria, which is in the judgment of the decision makers. So if people have done that, they're working on their own conscience, and whether they watch the old tapes or are going by someone who was there, but they all have to make up their decision based on the record in front of them.
Mr. Huxley?
To go with what County Council just said, when I was first sworn in, there was a land use, this happened to be land use issue, and it was appealed after I was sworn in, but it was an older issue back to a year or two before. And the advice to me, legal advice, based on, I think, other experiences, but I can't cite anything, but the legal advice was you do not want to vote on this unless you go through, and in this case it wasn't video, it was audio, little cassettes, unless you go through and listen to every single tape recorded meeting and hearing that was on that issue, because there's almost 100% guarantee that whoever lost would appeal because you were
you weren't basing your decision on the record,
the actual facts and the records, and that.
No, that's the standard practice, Louise. That's just advice.
So,
people follow advice or not.
So what I am looking at, because I'm the one that gets the audit comment, and the consequences of not having written minutes. I mean, there could be other consequences, but one of them is that we would get an audit comment for not having minutes done for the fiscal year 17-18 as we go through this audit. So I'm talking about minutes from July 2017 through June 2018, plus any meetings that have occurred since, when the auditors do come and do their field work since July 1st through that date, or a reasonable amount of that date, because of course minutes don't get done exactly on the immediately after the meeting. So what I'm looking at is what would it take to at least get July 2017 through the present meeting done.
Well, I definitely think that ought to be our priority to do that. And then, as Commissioner Huxley stated, some of those recordings and so forth that were earlier aren't even, you can't even tell what was on it because it's pretty bad recordings. So I think our priority ought to be
in order to, I don't know what is not done between those dates, how many minutes that is, how long it would take to get those meeting minutes, but I do know that the budget that we have to continue with the current person doing the minutes isn't enough to do much more. I mean, the last time we looked at it, it was through the payroll, through, let's see, the August, so it was through like the 17th of August. And it's been almost 3 weeks since then that she's continued working.
So how much extra do you think we're going to need?
Well, I'd like to know how much we have left to do.
Yeah, so
and do an estimate.
This came up just late last week, and like I said earlier, I'm not asking for the board to vote or approve anything. I'm looking to see general interest. Is the county board, interested in us researching further, getting an exact write-up for you to say, here's what's left, here's what's not done, and an estimate of how long it would take to do this and the kind of money. Because, I mean, that's ultimately where I would want decisions on the board to say, are you interested in it? It sounds like Mr. Huxley's not interested in it. And the other two, I don't know if are you interested in us having a further report on this?
I'm not sure I want to go way back. The simple reason is it wouldn't be even feasible to do that on some of the recordings, it sounds like. Commissioner Huxley?
I'm not interested, Administrator Schroeder, because you're not going to do it right. You're passing things that aren't right. You either do it right or I'm against it. I am opposed to not doing it properly to the law.
Got it. Commissioner Boyce, are you interested in minutes?
Oh, I'm just thinking, more money expended, I think, I don't know her, is it Jamie?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think she's doing a good job, but, it goes back to what I've stated so many times. You say it's a written law, and I've said also so many times, state of Oregon does not have written minutes on any meeting, and so maybe their systems are advanced. I can't believe their systems are any advanced from what we have now. So I'm just nervous about almost out of control spending.
Can we at least look at how much it would cost to get the fiscal year 17-18 done, and just find out how much it would cost to get those? I mean, this is not saying do it. This is saying how much would it cost to do it, and that's what I'd like to find out.
Estimate on staff time on that? Because everything adds to
they've
the
got
cost.
the list of what's done, and I just got to figure out, how long. I can look and see the recordings, how many hours they are, how long will it take to do that, to do the minutes from those recordings.
Well, and not only that, if we have shorter meetings.
Yeah, and I just don't know of the ones that have been done, the ones that haven't been done, how long are those meetings? That's why I need to know. I mean, it will take me not very long to do an estimate, but I'm not going to go sit there and look at everything until you say that you want to do it.
We'll come back on the 19th with a further analysis of this issue.
Okay, Commissioner Huxley?
Yeah.
Now the statement, and this is the second time the statement's been made that the state doesn't have written minutes, and I spent a couple months now, probably. I went back to look at the legislative department, and they have one impressive system I mean, really, it's got to be costing taxpayers a fortune, but it's one impressive system on their meetings. And the people that submit testimony, the people that provide oral testimony, they're videoed. They also, on all of those
period of time, we'll be able to look at it to say,
And,
is this
I
something that
think
the
if
county is
people
interested in
realize
budgeting
that
more
the
money
county's
to
coming
accomplish
down on
more,
some of these issues,
nuisance abatement.
they're going to
And,
clean
I
their mess
think
up
if
before
people
we have
realize that the county's
coming down on some of these issues.
I'm still
they're
looking
gonna
on,
clean their mess
still
up
looking for a
before we
building
have to
official. We've done interviews.
Come down on them, I'm hoping.
I'm still looking on, still looking for a building official. We've done interviews. We're still in negotiations trying to find a building official. It's a mandated service that the county provides. If the county does not provide that service, you turn it over to the state. The state is not interested in taking over that service, obviously. It would not be a very good, it wouldn't be as timely, and contractors have a problem. And again, we're struggling with some of the same issues that the sheriff's struggling with, concerning what are we willing to pay for employees to come here, and this is evidence. And I just put up an advertisement for a planning director. And so planning director will be looking at gathering applications for that also. In addition, there's probably 10 more open positions on the bulletin board down the hall for people that were waiting to have people apply for these jobs. So I will be on vacation next week. Council Huddle will be your acting administrator if needed. I will be in the state. I'll be around and available if needed, if something happens, but I won't be in the office.
Okay.
So.
What was that?
Would you step up to the microphone, please?
Council Huddle is not going to be here on Monday. Am I temporary acting like I was before?
Well, they sure as heck aren't going to let me near that title.
So what was it? What was I before? It was no, it was
temporary interim something.
It was something like that.
You just want something for your resume.
I want to on my resume
Well,
again.
technically, Clark, I think, gets to designate that person. If you look at the ordinance on that, but I will not be here Monday.
I'm not.
Okay.
I will designate somebody for Monday, and then you
Okay.
on Tuesday.
Thank you.
Just say it.
That's all I have.
Okay. Commissioner updates. Commissioner Boyce, you're first.
Just very happy to get the fire report today. You heard me mention that we have a lot of citizens in the county that look at and I tried to communicate this with the Red Team command group, that citizens view them as 0 for 3, the management strategy of the huge fires, and so that's why they are outspoken. These are not people with an axe to grind. They're just simply concerned for their county, and they are very dedicated to making sure we get the facts. You also heard me say that I've been there every day, and I'm satisfied with the hand that this fire management group from the very beginning was dealt. In particular, two things. Dudes were the biggest fire. You heard him say the highest priority fire in the country right now, or maybe it was the top two. I don't know. There is some
Second.
discussion on that. Yeah, where we should be, but nonetheless, it's huge. So that brings me back to federal forest and public land management changes, and that's my life mission, is to figure out a way to grow our forest back and overcome this devastation. It starts with wilderness areas where the roads are removed and you can't access for firefighting. It's a tremendous disadvantage for this county. in this part of the state, and then we have to fight for even minimal timber contracts outside the wilderness, and then when it burns, we're told we can only cut 2.5%, and the list, what it's done to our water, the wildlife habitat, to our recreational aspects, it's a major series of difficulties to overcome, and hopefully prosper from, but it's going to take a few years. And so hopefully over time we can ally up with the Forest Service and other, the BLM, certainly the state of Oregon, certainly the tribes, and it's going to take some real effort to bring everybody together. And everything else, I think, everything else will wait. Our next meeting, I think we're going to have a meeting the 25th, was it?
We have a workshop on the 12th.
12th, excuse me.
Another county board meeting on the 19th.
The idea on the workshop on the 12th, if I could, we have Beth Barker Hidalgo wants to do a lease, and she's going to present some of those for the board to consider and then approve for the board for rules comment, and then with direction we'll to talk about. So thank you.
One more. What do we have going on the 19th? Do we know yet? Or any kind of preliminary agenda that you're...
One item will be the decorum policy, second reading, because we didn't have a unanimity on the emergency adoption. So that's one item.
Meeting tracking. So the 19th, we have Pelican Bay Heights Annex to HWPUD, and then we have Roadmaster staff report for Pacific City Platte Road vacation. So far on our list for the 19th.
So I'd recommend we would go to the 26th unless other legitimate items surface that we need to look at. So I would be open. Otherwise, if we're going to do the 19th, or excuse me, I keep saying the 19th, the 12th.
12th is a workshop. Yeah.
Yeah. Just my take.
Okay, is that your report?
Sure. I have a question. Does the board want to not have a workshop on the 12th with those two items, the lease presentation and
there seemed to be some urgency on
wage,
a couple of those two,
and our fairness rules comments? Do you have?
I'm fine with it.
Okay. All right. Just wondering. All right. Because that, you know, I mean, you could delegate the wage and hour rules comments to staff, and I think the presentation on the lease would be pretty quick. We could do it at a regular meeting. But again, just wondering. We're not trying to fill time here. It's up to the board.
What's the one on the lease again?
Oh, well, again, yeah. Again, we've been approached to lease part of the Clark. I don't want to step on your toes here on this thing.
Go ahead.
We've been approached by comment on these if we want. And
September 19th. You mentioned the 26th.
If I'm not mistaken, I think his proposal was, if we're going to be meeting here on the 12th, could we not meet on the 19th?
Okay, I just wanted to be clear.
Was that essentially the gist, Commissioner Boyce?
Yes, those are all Wednesdays.
Okay.
And I'm fine with all three of them.
18th, the Board of Commissioners sent a letter telling them about high charges regarding their MCare contract in the emergency room, and people were paying way too much. And I just received an email from Dr. Greg Duncan, who I've worked with on this issue. And let me just read this really quickly. This is the email. You need one more. Okay, it just says, with a new group called Sound Physicians. Last Tuesday, a Sutter Coast representative told the healthcare district, and Greg Duncan is on the healthcare district, that the new group will not be continuing the practice of the out-of of thanks to the Sutter Board, which I did. And I'm going to give you a copy of this letter, and I don't know whether you want to approve it today, but let me just read it. If you do, we can sign it. To you and the Board of Directors, expressing our concerns about Sutter's high charges for care and its out-of-network emergency room individuals or organizations which operate out-of-network will be replacing MCare with a new group called Sound Physicians and a Sutter Coast representative told the Del Norte Health District that Sound our constituents, we would like to thank you for making this change. This change will save money for the citizens of Curry County that use Sutter's, my gosh, I missed a spelling thing, emergency services. We would also hope that you would continue working on making the charges for various tests and imaging studies more
will
yeah,
no longer
I got
continuing.
that too.
Okay.
So I'll change. Would you be interested in signing this letter of thanks? I think we need to reward good behavior myself.
I'm okay with it.
Okay.
I'm
Would you be okay with
more
that?
than okay, and I commend you. And I think that you and I have agreed that, boy, the healthier Sutter is, the healthier it is for all of our citizens and Del Norte too. So, and the better it'll be for Curry General Hospital.
Well, I will get those typos fixed and get it on a It is. Okay. So I'm done with my report, blaming the printer, et cetera, et cetera. So, Commissioner Huxley, your report. 254.
On the, what's the status? I know the hope was, and I'm looking at county council, of the airport. It was the hope that we would have today or tomorrow would be the close of all the open items.
Louise Kallstrom and I had a phone conversation and shot it up the Federal Aviation Administration chain of command to be approved. They don't know why it's not approved, the transfer of sponsorship, but it's a required element of closing. We don't have it yet. Hopefully we've got until tomorrow to get it, but really that is the only thing waiting to happen on it. So hope springs eternal, and if we don't get it tomorrow, I think we'll extend our escrow another week. But
very, very, very close.
Everything is agreed upon on the pricing, and soon and own that building and be able to start to go to contract on the construction.
Did you have anything else?
That's it.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you for coming.